of domestic abuse offenders across the whole justice system. This will strengthen victim protection and offender management, delivering on a recommendation made by the Independent Sentencing Review.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sickened by the frequency with which I hear from victims and survivors of domestic abuse about the ways in which the criminal justice system has aggravated their trauma. Recently, one constituent told me that she was living in fear after her abuser was released early, but the probation service failed to enforce probation conditions. Another has seen the charges against her ex-partner scheduled for criminal trial in 2 years' time, and in the meantime, he continues to exert coercive control through the family courts. So will the Minister agree to meet with me to review what's gone wrong in these two cases and what lessons can be taken about how to use identifiers of aggravation to give victims and survivors more protection?
Minister.
I thank him for that question and for all of the work he is doing to amplify the voices of victims and survivors. Like him, I too am sickened by the treatment of these majority of women and girls in our criminal justice system going through this. He will know we inherited a criminal justice system in absolute crisis. It is why we conducted a once-in-a-generation review of our courts process, the Leveson Review, which the Government will be responding to shortly, and the once-in-a-generation independent sentencing review to look at exactly the issues he's talking about. But I will happily meet with him to discuss this further.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent, who had been the victim of historic domestic abuse by both her partner and her children, recently raised with me the need for a clearer understanding and definition of child-to-parent abuse. At the time of her abuse, my constituent did not know that what her children were doing could be classified as domestic abuse, and both the police and social services failed to understand that she was the victim and not her children. Could the Minister therefore please provide an update on the work that's being done to reach a legal definition of child-to-parent abuse?
Minister.
Thank my honourable friend for raising a really vital point. She too, like I am, will be horrified at the results coming out of the femicide report this week showing the rise in mothers being killed by their sons. This is something that we have to tackle as a society, and she will be pleased to know that what she is talking about will be in the upcoming Violence Against Women and Girls strategy.
Number 2, please.
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, trans people deserve dignity and respect. This government is upholding the legal protections that Labour's Equality Act put in place, ensuring that trans people can live free from discrimination and harassment. Work is already underway to fulfil our manifesto commitments, including delivering a full trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices, equalising all strands of hate crime, and reviewing health services to make sure that trans people receive appropriate and high-quality care.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will be aware that many trans people with gender recognition certificates followed all legal processes in good faith, often over many years, and making legally binding commitments to live in their acquired gender for life. Yet now they find themselves legally bound to live in one gender, while at the same time being denied access to services and facilities aligned with that same gender. So how does the Minister plan to resolve those contradictory legal obligations, and what will she do to provide immediate support to the trans community?
Mr. Speaker, I do recognise the importance of gender recognition certificates, and I want to be absolutely clear to this House, as I have been on many occasions, that no one, and that includes trans people, should suffer indignity or a lack of respect. They must, of course, have access to safe provisions and appropriate services. But, Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court ruling was clear that biological sex is the means by which single-sex provision will be delivered.
Catherine Fuchs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm really pleased that the Government is committed to delivering a full trans-inclusive ban on conversion therapy. Is the Minister able to advise us as to when we will see that legislation brought forward to bring this abusive practice to an end?
Thursday.
Mr. Speaker, I would say to my honourable friend that we are committed to bringing forward a draft bill to make sure that we deliver on our manifesto commitment of a full trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices, abhorrent practices that have no place in our society.
General Minister Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The EHRC has confirmed that at least 19 public bodies, including organisations across the policing, education and health sectors, are misrepresenting the law on single-sex spaces. This is a breach of the Equality Act, as confirmed by the recent Supreme Court ruling. Has the Minister been told which bodies these are? And please, can she confirm how women and girls can have any confidence in them if they are knowingly and deliberately breaking the law.
Sarah Stone.
Mr Speaker, the results of the previous government's call for input showed that while the law was being followed in the majority of cases, a small number of examples were identified that seemed to have misinterpreted how the single-sex exemptions of the Equality Act operate. The Honourable Lady will appreciate that it is for the independent regulator, the EHRC, to follow up on these issues through their appropriate processes. They are looking at it in more detail and will be working with organisations to put this right.
Democrat spokesperson Lisa Small.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My constituent Charlie is from Offerton. He has a gender recognition certificate that says he's male. He has a birth certificate that says he's male, and he has a resplendent ginger beard. But the interim EHRC guidance says he should use the ladies' loo. This is clearly crackers, and Charlie tells me he's had stick in the past when using the ladies. It's in the interest of the whole of society for trans people to be able to leave the house, and for there to be a loo they can use in peace while they do so, while they contribute fully to our society. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that when the final guidance is published, which we're expecting soon, that parliamentary scrutiny would be a good thing to ensure that the guidance is as good as it can possibly be, so that trans people can live their lives to the full with the clarity and security they need?
Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, I agree that trans people and women deserve appropriate access to safe spaces, to the right level of accommodation, and to make sure that provision is there so that no one feels that their safety is at risk. I should be clear to the House that the Government did not receive advance sight or notice of the interim update from the EHRC. It is now consulted on its proposed changes to the draft updated code following the ruling. I have yet to receive that code from the EHRC. Once that happens, we will make sure as a government that we consider it fully as the House would expect.
Will Forster.
3, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We are committed to halving violence against women and girls within the next decade, and we are working tirelessly to deliver this ambitious plan to tackle these heinous acts through our Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. Ministers across government meet regularly to drive progress through the Violence Against Women and Girls Ministerial Group.
Forster.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The murder of 10-year-old Zara Sharif in my constituency of Woking was a harrowing example of violence against women and girls in the home. Social services play a vital role in protecting vulnerable girls, yet we often hear that they're overwhelmed and under-resourced. Will the Minister please confirm what steps this government is taking to ensure local authorities' social services are able to protect vulnerable children and to stop tragedies like Zara ever happening again?
Minister.
I rise to give the whole House, I'm sure, their sympathy with the case that he has outlined, which I understand the inquest is still ongoing. However, to the substantive point about his question, I would say that children's social care and adult social care have historically not always been what victims felt they could rely on, and there have been many cases of that over the years, and that without doubt I sit in front of the Secretary of State for Education, the work with my office, the Ministry of Justice and her office to ensure that that is handled in the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy and more broadly is at the top of all of our agenda.
Polly Billington.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would my right honourable friend use this opportunity to remind the House how many people, how many women and girls are vulnerable to the people that they know as distinct from the people that they don't? And also, use this opportunity to condemn elected politicians who peddle misinformation about who is most at risk and where the targets really are.
I thank my honourable friend, and whilst I don't have the exact data in front of me that she has requested, I'm not entirely sure that exact data exists. But what I can say from decades of experience is that women and girls in our country are far more at risk from people who know our names, whose names we know, who we work amongst, who we live alongside with. The idea of stranger danger is one that most women don't recognise, and the people that they fear are people that they know.
Sir Julian Smith.
The Parole Board are extremely concerned about the impact on domestic abuse victims of the sentencing bill coming to the House. Could I urge her to keep close discussion with members of the Parole Board and the Justice Secretary as this bill progresses?
Minister.
I absolutely make that commitment here today, and throughout the progress of any sentencing changes, the Home Office, myself and the Victims Minister have been heavily involved and will continue to be, to make sure that in a difficult situation that was left, that we make sure every safeguard possible is in place.
Johnny Reid.
The Minister will know that the rise of platforms like OnlyFans has led to the mainstream commercialisation of women's bodies. Does she agree that if we're to tackle violence against women and girls, we must look at pornography prostitution? And will she commit to working with colleagues in DSET to ensure that it's included in the strategy of violence against women and girls?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and she is absolutely right. A strategy on violence against women and girls that did not include the online elements that she highlights, as well as others, would not be worth its salt. And what I commit to is to continue to work with DSIT on these issues.
Mohammed Just.
Oh, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is unacceptable that women are experiencing poor maternity care. An investigation has been launched to understand the underlying systemic issues and develop national recommendations so women receive the care that they deserve. We're also taking immediate action to improve accountability and better identify safety concerns. This includes rolling out a programme to tackle discrimination and racism.
Mohammed Yassin.
Sadly, Bedford Hospital's maternity services were downgraded to inadequate last year, and its gold standard home birth service has recently been reduced. Will the Minister ensure that the review examines why choices for birthing services are still being cut, and will they guarantee improved outcomes in maternity and perinatal care so that all women can access safe, personalised, high-quality care?
Minister. I thank my honourable friend, and he's a strong campaigner on this issue for his constituents. The Care Quality Commission is committed to monitoring maternity services at Bedford hospitals closely, including through further inspections, to make sure people receive safe care while improvements are implemented. The investigation will seek to understand the systemic issues behind why so many women, babies and families experience unacceptable care. The Chair is working with families to finalise the terms of reference for the investigation, and these will be published shortly.
Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree that listening to the voices of bereaved families who've lost their babies is of essential importance? And if he does, will he listen to the calls of Sussex families to appoint Donna Ockenden to lead their review?
I thank her for that question. I agree that these voices are absolutely vital. It's not going to be possible to really get to the bottom of why care is not at an acceptable standard without hearing those voices. I've heard what she said about Donna Ockenden, and I will certainly take that away and discuss that with ministerial colleagues.
Chair of the Select Committee, Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trauma during childbirth can have lifelong and debilitating impacts. Failing maternity services are felt by all, but especially families from low-income and ethnic minority backgrounds. In my constituency, where too many already experience health inequalities, the Luton and Dunstable Hospital's maternity unit has recently been downgraded to inadequate by the CQC. Does the Minister agree with me that mothers and babies deserve better? And what cross-departmental work is taking place to ensure NHS trusts across the country improve maternity care?
Minister.
I thank her for that question, and she is campaigning strongly for her constituents on this issue. We are establishing the Maternity and Neonatal National Task Force, which will develop a national plan to drive improvements across maternity and neonatal care. That will be chaired by my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, and it will be made up of a panel of experts and family, charity and staff representatives. I also was pleased to learn that my honourable friend met with Baroness Merron in June to discuss maternity care in Luton North.
Testament.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Post-maternity, many women suffer female pelvic prolapse, and the matter of surgical mesh implants is one on which I'm unable to get any answers. I wondered if the Minister would please work with his counterparts at the Department for Health and Social Care to get a realistic update on exactly what's happened as a result of the Hughes report, and to give me the information about meetings between the DHSC and indeed the Patient Safety Commissioner on progress on those recommendations.
Minister.
I thank her for that question. Absolutely, I will raise this with colleagues in the department, and we will write to her urgently with the answers that she's looking for.
Shadow Secretary of State Mims Davis.
Once again, this Labour government has failed women and girls in their inaction and blinkered mindset to the safety in their communities, and their slow action on Theo Clark and the member for Canterbury's 2024 Birth Trauma Inquiry Report, recommending national maternity strategy that we committed to. Over a year on, a so-called rapid inquiry announced in June only has a chair with no experience in maternity services and an expectation to fix this national scandal by the end of the year. This is asking too much of one woman to support many women across the country. How is this Health Minister going to address ongoing and widespread concerns heard again in the Chamber, react to the existing evidence and stop the belief that many women are being failed by this Labour government?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I really do find it a bit rich that the party opposite stands there and tries to give us lectures after the 14 years of neglect and incompetence that was the trademark of their time in government. Baroness Amos is chairing the independent maternity and neonatal investigation. This will be a rapid investigation with two core roles: conducting urgent reviews by the end of this year of up to 10 trusts where there are specific issues, systemic investigation into maternity and neonatal care in England to create one set of national actions to drive the improvements needed to ensure high-quality care and that women are listened to. That is responsible government. That is trying to fix the mess they made after 14 years, and I think the party opposite would do well to actually support us in that.
Jim Shannon.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, we want young people with disabilities and health impairments to secure good employment as soon as possible and to fulfil their aspirations. The Pathways to Work Green Paper proposed a youth phase in health and disability benefits, and we're currently reviewing the consultation responses.
Jim Shannon.
Can I thank the Minister for that response? Research by the national disability charity Sense has found that over half of disabled benefit claimants with complex needs between the ages of 18 and 34 say there are few jobs that met their needs as disabled people. What steps can the Minister take to ensure that there are more employment opportunities available to young disabled people with complex needs? Thank you.
Minister.
The honourable gentleman raises a very important point. There are excellent examples of job carving for people with complex needs, and we need more of that, I think. We're looking forward to the report to be submitted soon by Sir Charlie Mayfield on what more employers can do to open up opportunities for people out of work on disabilities grounds, and he'll have some very interesting proposals, I think.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last Conservative government left so many young disabled people in Ealing Southall who wanted to work consigned to a lifetime on benefits. But at West Ealing Job Centre, we are already seeing a difference being made with £1.3 billion of funding for employment support from this Labour government. Does the Minister agree that the Mayfield Review offers a once-in-a-lifetime chance to transform the workplace, to make it more accessible for disabled people?
Yes, I do agree with my honourable friend, and she's absolutely right. Disengaging from work and learning in early adulthood can do lasting harm to career prospects and to well-being. We're launching the Youth Guarantee so that all 18 to 21-year-olds in England, including disabled young people, can access quality training opportunities, an apprenticeship or help to find work. And I'm glad to hear things are developing so well in her constituency.
We come to topicals. Samantha Nibley.
Topical question number 1, please, Mr. Speaker.
Sarah Stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is focused on breaking down barriers to opportunity for everyone. We're backing working families, saving them £7,500 through rolling out 30 hours of government-funded childcare and rolling out free breakfast clubs in our schools. Building on the proud legacy of Sure Start, we will deliver 100 Best Start family hubs to give every child the best start in life. And we're opening 10 new construction technical excellence colleges, backing our young people to learn a trade and to get on. Our plan for change will deliver for everyone.
Samantha Nibley.
I thank the Secretary of State for her response, and I'm sure she will have seen research last week that parents in my constituency of South Derbyshire will be really disappointed in that mums earn £302 less per week than dads. For too long, the Tories were happy for these costs to fall on women. So what steps is she taking to ensure that this Labour government tackles the motherhood penalty?
Show State.
I totally agree with my honourable friend that it is totally unacceptable, and this Labour government will deliver for women, unlike the party opposite, whose leader said that maternity pay was excessive, a reform leader who claimed it was a fact of life that women coming back from maternity leave would earn less. We know the difference that high-quality early years education makes, and that's why I'm delighted that from this week, working families will be able to access 30 hours of government-funded childcare.
Show Secretary of State Mims Davies.
Writer and comedian Graham Linehan was apparently arrested by 5 police officers at Heathrow, then questioned about 3 tweets which he says were based on his gender-critical views, a belief protected by the Equality Act. Despite this government's claim to protect free speech, Mr Linehan has been banned from using the platform as part of his bail conditions. Can the Secretary of State confirm if it is now a crime in Britain to tell potentially offensive jokes and perhaps face armed arrest?
Show State.
Mr Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady will know well that I cannot comment on live police investigations, as the police operate independently of government. But the Home Secretary has been clear that her priority and the priority of this government is that the police focus on tackling antisocial behaviour and making sure that people can walk our streets free from fear.
Yuan Yang.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Minister join me in congratulating Reading's University Medical Group, a GP practice in my constituency which was recently awarded the Gold Pride in Practice Award by the LGBT Foundation? When I visited the practice last week, the doctors raised the issue of transgender care. Many constituents have also written to me concerned about ongoing barriers to treatment for young people needing gender-affirming care. So what more can the government do to ensure that young transgender people get the treatment they urgently need?
Show State.
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising that work in her community. The government has commissioned NHS England to undertake an LGBT health evidence review that is being led by Dr Michael Brady, the National Advisor on LGBT health, and it will diagnose the problems we need to solve, making sure that we have evidence-led recommendations in order to improve better access to healthcare for adults.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A constituent with muscular dystrophy reports facing an 8 to 12-month wait for AGM Healthcare to deliver a new wheelchair, far beyond the 18-month target. So what steps will the Minister take with her health colleagues to address that really poor performance by AGM Healthcare nationwide, and particularly the equalities implications of that?
Mr Speaker, if the honourable gentleman would provide me with some more details of his constituent's case, I'd be happy to make sure that's looked into by ministers and he receives a full response.
Dr Rubat.
Mr Speaker, a constituent and mum's got in touch because she's lost her entitlement to the 30 hours of childcare this government so brilliantly rolled out, and the student finance version because she's doing law as a mature student. Can the Minister look into closing this loophole so that women who retrain mid-career aren't penalised?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. We recognise the value of parents continuing in education, and that's why there are often available mechanisms such as the Childcare grant and the Parents' Learning Allowance. As I don't know the full circumstances of her constituent's case, I'd be grateful if she could write to me and I could make sure that we give her full advice on the childcare support that she might be available to her.
Sir Desmond Swade.
She's chosen to champion the rights of the residents of the Bell Hotel over those of the local community.
Mr Speaker, that is just plain wrong.
Correct whistle.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Parental leave is just as essential for families who adopt as those with biological children, giving vital time for bonding. However, many adopted families cannot access the same paid leave. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure equal parental leave for adopted parents?
Mr. Speaker, that is an important area that my honourable friend raises. We know that preparing for and adopting a child is an important time in the life of families. That's why we've committed to reviewing the parental leave system to ensure that it best supports working families, including where that comes to adoption as well. And I'd be happy to discuss that further, or make sure a minister discusses it further with my honourable friend.
Kirsty Blackman.
Has the government done an equality assessment on how cancelling family reunion differentially impacts those from ethnic minority backgrounds?
Mr. Speaker, the Home Secretary has set out our approach and the action that we will be taking in this area, and I will make sure that the Honourable Lady receives a response from the Home Office on the matter that she raises.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Shelters My Colour Speaks Before Me report highlights systemic discrimination and access to housing, from disproportionate scrutiny of applicants to barriers in both social and private rented housing. How is the government ensuring that tackling structural racism is at the heart of housing reform and this government's policies?
Mr. Speaker, we are determined to ensure that we have high-quality housing that is available, both social housing for rent and also that people have the opportunity to buy their own home. And of course, there is no place for racism within our housing system. If my honourable friend would share with me the details of the report she mentions, I'd make sure I can look into that further on her behalf.
We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Dawn Butler.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, we won the contract for the biggest defence deal that Norway has ever placed. Mr. Speaker, that's a £10 billion investment securing 15 years of shipbuilding in Scotland and across the rest of the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, one day later on Monday, we launched 30 hours of free childcare for working families. Not only does this save working parents £7,500 per year, it will transform the life chances of our children, because every child will start reception with an equal opportunity to achieve their potential. That is a Labour government in action, delivering for working people. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Economically deprived high streets, poorer high streets, are flooded with gambling shops. The aim to permit legislation prevents councils from saying no. My summer campaign on gambling reform has received loads of support, including Gordon Brown, who says if we tax the gambling industry, we'll get £3 billion for our economy. Will the Prime Minister join campaigners and help me to end aim to permit so constituents like yours and mine can thrive?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank her for her question? It is important that local authorities are given additional tools and powers to ensure vibrant high streets. We are looking, Mr. Speaker, at introducing cumulative impact assessments. These are like those already in place for alcohol licensing. We will give councils stronger powers over the location and numbers of gambling outlets to help create safe, thriving high streets.
Leader of the Opposition,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to send our condolences to the family of our former colleague, David Warburton. I also welcome the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister has referred herself to the ethics advisor. She has admitted she underpaid tax. So why is she still in office? But there is not just a crisis at the very top of his cabinet, Mr. Speaker. There is a crisis brewing for the whole country. When was the last time the cost of government borrowing was so high?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I join her in her comments about Mr. Warburton? I think the whole House would unite on an issue such as that. In relation to the Deputy Prime Minister, she has explained her personal circumstances in detail. She's gone over and above in setting out the details, including, Mr. Speaker, yesterday afternoon, asking a court to lift a confidentiality order in relation to her own son. I know from speaking at length with the Deputy Prime Minister just how difficult that decision was for her and her family. But she did it to ensure that all information is in the public domain. She has now referred herself to the independent advisor. That is the right thing to do. But I can be clear, I am very proud to sit alongside a Deputy Prime Minister who is building 1.5 million homes, who is bringing the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, and who's come from a working-class background to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country. Mr. Speaker, on the question of borrowing costs, they have risen across the world, as the Leader of the Opposition well knows. We are driving them down by getting debt down. That is hardwired into our fiscal rules. Those fiscal rules are non-negotiable. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take lectures on the economy from the party opposite, who crashed the economy, mortgages went through the roof, and a record fall in living standards.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure we would have heard all that sympathy if it was the Conservative Deputy Prime Minister who was being attacked. I remember when the Prime Minister said that tax evasion is a criminal offence and should be treated as all other fraud. If he had a backbone, he would sack her. But let's get back to the issue of borrowing. He did not answer why it is so high. Conservatives left him the fastest growing economy in the G7. Under him, the cost of our borrowing is now higher than in Greece. Why does the Prime Minister think this is?
Mr. Speaker, if it had been the party opposite, there wouldn't have been the accountability that there now is in place, because they spent years and years avoiding it. And she makes her claims about the economy under their watch are about as credible as her place at Stanford University, frankly. But, Mr. Speaker, she leaves out of account because she wants to talk down the country. We've got the highest growth in the G7. Those figures, I look forward to her getting up and welcoming that. 5 interest rate cuts in a row. And of course, Mr. Speaker, £120 billion of investment in the first year of a Labour government. That is a record.
It's a terrible record, Mr. Speaker. I stand by every single thing that I have said. He cannot say why borrowing is higher under him. I will tell him why it is higher. It is because the Chancellor changed the fiscal rules so she could borrow record amounts. She maxed out the country's credit card, and that has pushed up borrowing costs. These are their bad choices, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, former members of the Monetary Policy Committee are warning, and I quote, that we are heading for an economic crash. Why does he think that he is right and they are wrong?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she can't resist. She comes straight back to talk the country down at every opportunity. She doesn't welcome the highest growth in the G7. She could have got up and welcomed that, Mr. Speaker, but no. What about the 380,000 jobs we've created? She could welcome that, but no. What about the 3 trade deals we've got? Not only does she not welcome them, she opposes them. And of course, she hasn't welcomed the Norway deal, the biggest deal for shipbuilding in a very, very long time. She should stop talking down the country and get behind the renewal this government is delivering.
Mr. Speaker, he is dragging down the country. He is dragging it down. How can he stand there and say that he is creating jobs? Unemployment has gone up every single month under this Labour government. And if he doesn't know why borrowing costs are going up, another reason is that the markets can see that he is too weak to control spending. Now, we are reading that he wants to have another go at welfare costing. What makes him think that they will vote for it this time?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we picked. I think I saw that the Leader of the Opposition said, I think at the weekend to the Sunday Times, that I think she said this: I've inherited a gigantic mess and I'm cleaning it up. She said it's very difficult, it's going to take a while. I know exactly how she feels.
Mr. Speaker, we're not the ones referring ourselves to ethics advisors. The fact is, he is floundering. Mr. Speaker, he is floundering. Perhaps he should have a read of the covers of the...
Shh. Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps he should have a read of the covers...
Order. We don't want to start the session with somebody leaving, do we? If somebody wants to volunteer, please do so. If not, I will choose one.
They can do the fake chairs as much as they like. The whole country knows what a mess of the economy they are making. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that taxes are going up for everyone, except perhaps the Deputy Prime Minister. I warned before the summer that we would face weeks of speculation about which taxes would be going up. The former head of the IFS says this sort of uncertainty is actively damaging to the economy. And now we find that we have to wait until the 26th of November for a budget. Does he really think the country or the markets can wait that long?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker said they're not referring themselves to the ethics advisor. That's amongst the reasons they got booted out of office last year. And she complains that we're going through the due process for a budget and going through the necessary steps. We tried a budget under their watch without going through those steps. What happened? They blew up the economy. We'll take no lessons from them.
Kemi Badenoch.
This is desperate stuff from the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. This week, he had another reset. This morning, the Prime Minister scrapped his 5 missions, and after scrapping his 3 foundations, scrapping his 6 first steps for change, and his 7 pillars for growth, the truth is this man has got no clue, 0 clue. But this is serious, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's incompetence is hurting real people. They're losing their jobs. The cost of everything is going up, from energy bills to the weekly shop. This is a crisis made in Downing Street. Isn't the truth that he is too weak to change course and too arrogant to admit he got things wrong?
I don't know what social media sites she's been on this morning, Mr. Speaker, but I think the chair of the Tory party said that we were the firefighters, this government. Well, in a sense we are, because we're putting out the fires that they created. They were the arsonists, the biggest fall in living standards on record and blowing up the finances. We spent the first year putting out their fires, quite right too. But now, Mr. Speaker, we're delivering on the cost of living. Funded childcare, £7,500 for working families. Free breakfast clubs, opening new schools-based nurseries. That's what we're fighting for, the best start for every child in this country.
Paulette Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Mayor of the West Midlands, Richard Parker, is delivering growth and jobs by backing SMEs like Bogue Toys in my constituency of Birmingham Erdington, which has just doubled in size. Will the Prime Minister join me in praising this success and confirm that boosting ambitious small and medium-sized businesses across the UK remains a key priority of his government? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Well, can I recognise and congratulate the businesses in her constituencies? Mr. Speaker, we published our small business plan, which was very well received, includes new rules cracking down on late payments, much long been asked for, £3 billion boost to more business loans and fairer business rate systems to support small businesses. That's why it was so warmly received. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sir Ed David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of these benches, can I join the Leader of the Opposition in sending our condolences to the family of David Warburton? And I'm sure the whole House will join me in paying tribute to Annette Brooke, who served in this House for 14 years and sadly passed away last month. Annette dedicated her life to public service and serving the people of Dorset, and she is greatly missed. Mr. Speaker, we have all seen the horrifying images from Gaza. The babies so thin from starvation you can see their skeletons. The bodies of children killed while queuing for water. The emaciated hostages still held captive by Hamas. The Prime Minister has rightly said he wants to stop all that. So when the one man in the world who has the power to stop that comes here to our country on a state visit, will the Prime Minister look President Trump in the eye and urge him to use the influence on Netanyahu and Qatar to make it stop?
Prime Minister.
Can I join him on his comments about Annette Brooke? And also in his description about the horrifying situation in Gaza, and it is horrifying. We're looking at a man-made famine on top of everything else. And that is why we're expending so much of our time with partners seeking to bring about a ceasefire, to get humanitarian aid in at pace, to get the hostages out, and of course to put forward a peace plan that can actually take us to a two-stage solution. And of course I'll talk to all international leaders about that. I would gently say to them that if he hadn't refused the invite to the state banquet, He could be there 2 weeks on Tuesday and speak to President Trump himself, and I'm surprised it's not an act of leadership to pass up that opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, I have to disagree with him on that. We are now debating this issue. But here's an issue where I hope he will agree with me. The European Convention on Human Rights is a British creation that protects all our basic rights and freedoms. Rights of children, disabled people, survivors of domestic abuse, victims of horrific crimes, everyone. It protects care home residents from abuse and families from being spied on by councils. But the leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of Reform want to join Russia and Vladimir Putin by withdrawing from the convention. The Liberal Democrats disagree, Mr. Speaker, and so do the majority of the British people. So will the Prime Minister categorically rule out withdrawing from the EHRC or suspending it or watering down our rights in any way?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will not withdraw from the European Convention of Human Rights. We do need to make sure that both the Convention and other instruments are fit for the circumstances we face at the moment, and therefore, of course, we have been, as we made clear, looking at the interpretation of some of those provisions. It would be a profound mistake to pull out of these instruments, because the first thing that would follow is every other country in the world that adheres to these instruments would pull out of all their agreements with this country. That would be catastrophic for dealing with the problem that we're actually dealing with.
Irene Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Scotland has a proud heritage as one of the world's great shipbuilding nations. On behalf of the defence industry workers across Ayrshire and beyond, can I welcome the largest ever export deal for new warships ever secured by the UK? And does the Prime Minister agree that this shows how, under Labour, we can build on our proud past to secure a brighter future for our shipbuilding industry?
Can I thank you for a question? Mr. Speaker, I was very pleased to get the call from the Prime Minister of Norway on Saturday night telling us that the UK had won this contract, beating off competition from the US, from France and from Germany because of the quality of shipbuilding in this country. This is a £10 billion deal, Mr. Speaker, 15 years' worth of shipbuilding, particularly in places like the Clyde. Thousands of skilled jobs in Scotland, and it does show the importance of the defence industrial strategy and the importance of Britain being taken seriously again on the international stage. Mr. Speaker, it comes on top of the record investment in defence that we've already announced earlier this year.
Robin Swan.
Mr. Speaker, I'm joined today in the gallery by the leadership of the Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster, an organisation and young people who are passionate about youth work, passionate about the rural countryside and passionate about the future of farming and agriculture. Agriculture policy is devolved, but the Prime Minister's agricultural inheritance tax is the thing that has them and young farmers across all the country despairing not just for their future, but the future of food security. When will the Prime Minister change course on the farm family inheritance tax, now that he's taking control of tax policy?
Prime Minister. First, can I welcome the Young Farmers Club of Ulster to Parliament and take this opportunity to say to him and to them that we've invested more than £2.7 billion in farming and nature recovery. That's been welcomed. And of course, we're developing a 25-year farming roadmap to make the sector more profitable. Again, that has been warmly welcomed, and their future will depend on that roadmap. We'll work with them.
Bill Ribeiro Abbey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Global Sumud Flotilla, which includes British citizens, sets sail for Gaza to break the illegal blockade and deliver much-needed aid. In June, the British boat, the Madeleine, was threatened and its crew detained, but we took no action. Can the Prime Minister say what has been learned from this and what steps are being taken to protect the British citizens on this flotilla?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, she raised a really important issue in relation to the horrifying situation in Gaza, and the Israeli government is preventing urgently needed aid from getting in, and that is why we're now seeing a man-made famine, and that should cause us all to pause and reflect. I have to say, we are working with other countries to get aid in by any practical means, but land routes are the only viable and sustainable means of getting aid into Gaza at the scale that is required. And Israel must lift the restrictions to allow aid agencies to deliver the life-saving supplies that are so desperately needed.
Pete Wishart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the budget date has finally been announced, and once again, Scotland is some sort of distant afterthought. A budget date left to the 11th hour because they do not know how to resolve their countless counter-bureaucrats. A budget date that has practically wrecked Scotland's budgetary process, leaving it almost impossible for us to pass a budget before Christmas, leaving great uncertainty in Scotland's public services. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? They couldn't even be bothered to notify the Scottish Government, leaving them to find this out on social media. So can I ask the Prime Minister, how is this reset in relationships working out?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, he overlooks the fact that the last budget there was a record settlement for Scotland, £50 billion a year. And he talks about the support. We've just won this Norway frigates contract. That is 15 years of shipbuilding in Scotland. The First Minister of the SNP has said what about that since Sunday? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I know we've got another SNP question in just a moment. Perhaps that will be the opportunity to welcome the deal that we won and the jobs now for Scotland.
Well done, McAvoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, last year my online safety forum of children and young people from every secondary school and college in Darlington found that 71% of our Year 10s and 12s had been contacted by a stranger online. A shocking failure that our Online Safety Act will hopefully prevent going forward. Will he join me on calling on the member for Clacton and all opposed to this vital act to pick a side? Are they with us, parents and child protectors, or are they with the predators harming our children online?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, the honourable member for Clacton is not here representing his constituencies in the House that he was elected to. No, he's flown to America to badmouth and talk down our country. And worse than that, Mr. Speaker, if you can believe it, he's gone there to lobby the Americans to impose sanctions on this country which will harm working people. You cannot get more unpatriotic than that. It's a disgrace. Mr. Speaker, on the question of the Online Safety Act, that protects children from material on suicide, on self-harm and online predators. And Reform say they would scrap it. When their leader was asked, well, what would you replace it with? His answer, there needs to be a tech answer. I don't know what that is. Well, you can't run a country on don't know answers.
Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure, like me, you got to enjoy everything UK hospitality has to offer over the summer, and 15 local pubs received nominations as part of my Community Pub Awards. I visited places like the Bull Inn in Battle, the Castle Inn in Pevensey, the Swan Inn in Darlington, the New Inn in Westfield, and Sidley Working Men's Club. Many of them told me how hard hit they've been by Labour's jobs tax, and UK Hospitality estimates 80,000 jobs have already been lost, and the Beer and Pub Association say a pub a day will close this year. Can the Prime Minister name a single pub landlord that thinks his current Deputy Prime Minister's employment bill is going to help rather than just make things worse?
Prime Minister.
Well, I hope he paced out the visits to all those pubs and didn't do them all in one go. But look, UK Hospitality has welcomed our small business plan, and that obviously applies to pubs. Yes, they have. And the reason is because it permanently lowers the business rates that they pay, and it tackles late payments, something they've been asking for a very, very long time. They talked about fixing this, but they never delivered. We're delivering.
Katrina Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents have endured 4 major fires in recent months across our community, including the devastating destruction of Cumbernault's iconic St Mungo's Church. Yet the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is consulting on downgrading Cumbernauld Fire Station, increasing response times and putting lives at risk. Can I ask the Prime Minister to make representation to the Scottish Government to not risk lives with cuts to our vital emergency services?
Prime Minister.
Well, I think the whole House is sorry to hear about the awful fires that her constituents have faced including the destruction of St Mungo's. And I know just how important that church was, Mr Speaker, to the local community. The Scottish Government have received the largest settlement in the history of devolution. That's £50 billion a year. That should be focused on the issues that matter to her constituency. And I will take this up and make sure that we raise it with the Scottish Government.
Stephen Gaffney.
First of all, I will refer to my comments earlier in the week since the Prime Minister's research isn't up to scratch. Mr Speaker, George Reid, who was a former presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament and an MP, passed away over the summer. He was a humanitarian to his very fingertips. He would have abhorred the demonisation of asylum seekers, including those desperate enough to cross the Channel in small boats. Now, figures published by the House of Commons Library shows that those asylum seekers who were forced to cross has increased dramatically after Brexit as a result of leaving the Dublin regulation. So, instead of punching down and joining in with the victim blaming of reform and the Conservatives, will the Prime Minister reject their isolationism and look to rejoin the Dublin Convention like every other country in Western Europe?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, there's nothing progressive about people crossing the Channel in small boats. Nothing progressive about that at all, and we need to ensure that that stops. On the question of the Dublin Agreement, I agree with him. We had a returns agreement with the whole of Europe. It was ripped up when we left the EU by people who made promises that that wouldn't be the case. We're rebuilding that relationship. We've reset that relationship. We now have a returns agreement with France. We wouldn't need a single relationship with France if we hadn't ripped up the Dublin Agreement.
Richard Berger.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're at a very dangerous political moment. Opinion polls warn that for the first time in our country's history, we risk the election of an extremist far-right government. We all have a duty to prevent that. To do so, don't we need to rebuild support through a return to real Labour values, through real action to tackle poverty and inequality, through a wealth tax on the super-rich, and through an ethical foreign policy that takes a strong principled stand on war crimes, whoever commits them?
Mr Speaker, look, we do stand at an important moment. We can have the politics of renewal under this government or the politics of grievance from reform, who do not want to fix the problems. They want the grievance to continue because the last thing they want is improvement in the lives of working people in this country, because they feed off the problem and the grievance being there. That's the difference.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Admiral Lord West was head of the Royal Navy, Chief of Defence Intelligence and a Labour Security Minister, and currently sits on the Intelligence and Security Committee. So when he writes in the national press denouncing what he calls the disgraceful decision to hand over ownership of the Chagos archipelago, adding that he does not accept that the move is, quotes, absolutely vital for our defence and intelligence as the Prime Minister claims, should we rely on his professional judgment or not?
Minister.
I have the misfortune to disagree with him.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. New mums and dads in my constituency of Lowestoft tell me that one of the things they worry about the most is whether they can afford the childcare they need to be able to go back to work. That's why it's great parents will be able to save up to £7,500 a year on nursery fees thanks to this Labour government. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that investing in childcare is not only important for tackling the cost of living crisis, but also helps to remove barriers to deciding to have children in the first place?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising this, and I was very proud on Monday to make the announcement about childcare. As she rightly says, it saves not just on average £7,500 for families in a cost of living crisis, but also, crucially, this is from 9 months, Mr Speaker, to 4 years. We know that under the last government, there's this disparity at age 4 between children arriving at reception, some barely out of nappies, others quite articulate. That locks in inequality for life. I'm really pleased that this measure that we've now taken on Monday unlocks that and makes sure every single child aged 4 gets to the starting line in reception with a fair chance of going as far as their talents will take them.
Ellie Challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Conservative Party deludes itself with the myth of endless fossil fuels, the rest of us know just how ridiculous and reckless that is. Extracting more oil and gas from the declining North Sea will do nothing to protect energy security or jobs. Now, the Prime Minister himself has stated that climate action is at the heart of his government's mission for the protection and prosperity of Britain and the world. So with a decision finally looming on the Rosebank oil field, will the Prime Minister prove his words mean something and finally put an end to this climate-wrecking project?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I did notice that the Leader of the Opposition went to Scotland, I think, this week to announce that if she ever became Prime Minister, which is extremely unlikely, that she would pull down £50 billion of investment in renewables in Scotland. This is good, secure jobs of the future. Absolutely reckless behaviour. They haven't learned anything. But, I mean, the Greens, of course, have got a new leader, unfortunately for her. And we can now see what they really stand for. Withdrawal from NATO at a moment like this, totally unfunded spending that would blow up the economy. They would block all planning proposals. And they've now got a leader who's made, to say the least, some very strange comments about women. Yeah. There is only one party delivering fairness and tackling the climate crisis, and that's the Labour Party.
Yeah. Alex Selby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, in September 21, you met ex-Arsenal player Michael Thomas in Portcullis House alongside other former footballers of the V11 when I hosted them in Parliament. Last night, the BBC broadcast the V11 documentary exposing the fraud perpetrated against them and the financial abuse they have suffered within the footballing system. They have all suffered terrible financial loss, but HMRC are still chasing them for taxes from funds that were defrauded from them. Prime Minister, will you meet Michael Thomas and other players with me to see how we can protect victims of fraud and instead go after the perpetrators of fraud?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Well, I will, and I have met Michael Thomas a number of times. Of course, he's got a special place in my heart, having scored that winning goal at Anfield when we won the league, although the less said about winning at Anfield at the moment, probably the better. But the serious point is that these are sporting heroes who brought us so much joy, and they should have proper support from their sporting bodies on both health and welfare. Michael Thomas and others running a really important campaign to bring this to our attention. We do need a trusted system that takes the well-being of our sports people seriously, particularly those in vulnerable positions. And I know the Minister for Sport is in contact with the campaigners on this issue.
Ollie Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a recent visit to the UK Space Agency based in my Oxfordshire constituency, I learned of the huge value created by our space sector, generating more than £7 for every £1 invested. Given his government's decision to scrap the UKSA as an executive agency, will the Prime Minister guarantee its international credibility, its operational independence and its budgets? And will he visit Harwell campus to hear what our brilliant space companies need from government?
Yeah. Prime Minister. Well, I thank him for raising this important issue and reassure him that we do want to keep the huge expertise and knowledge of the UK Space Agency staff, including those that are working in his constituency. We have already secured almost £300 million in contracts from the European Space Agency, and this will cut costs, reducing duplication, so we can really focus on growing this important sector.
Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the start of the full-scale invasion into Ukraine, Russia has stolen, abducted and indoctrinated at least 19,546 children.
Awful.
It's one of the most heinous crimes of this war. Can I warmly welcome this morning's announcement of an additional package of sanctions on those perpetrating these crimes? And can the Prime Minister assure the House that he will do everything possible to return these children to their homes?
Prime Minister. Well, can I acknowledge her campaigning on this really important issue? The Russia's policy of forced deportations, indoctrination of Ukrainian children is despicable, and anybody who's heard the stories or seen the pictures cannot be other than profoundly moved by it. We have taken firm action. Mr. Speaker, this was one of the issues that we discussed, as it happens, 2 weeks ago in Washington when I went over with other leaders to ensure that we are all putting maximum pressure. But this, amongst the very many horrors of the Ukraine conflict, this is right up there as one of the absolute worst.
Jack Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many, I was deeply concerned that a police force deemed it necessary to take 5 armed officers to arrest a comedy writer from a flight. Some may have found Mr. Linehan's comments offensive, but that isn't the point. If you don't support speech you don't like, you don't support free speech. Will the Prime Minister commit to reviewing our speech laws to ensure the legitimate free expression is protected? And will he condemn the culture within the public sector which prioritises this dangerous and perverse nonsense?
Well, I thank you for raising this. You will have seen that the Commissioner has put out a statement in relation to the particular case this morning. I've been clear throughout, we must ensure the police focus on the most serious issues and the issues that matter most to our constituencies and all communities. And that includes tackling issues like antisocial behaviour, knife crime and violence. And we have a long history of free speech in this country. I'm very proud of that and I will always defend it.
Week where the Prime Minister has worked tirelessly to place the Clydeside, Glasgow, Govan at the epicentre of Type 26 shipbuilding. Is he perplexed, as I am, at the radio silence from the SNP and the contempt the SNP continues to show for the defence sector? And does he agree with me that that contempt is a contempt for jobs, it's a contempt for growth, and it's an 18-year-long contempt for Scotland?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I am perplexed that the First Minister has not welcomed this. This is a massive deal for Scotland. It's 15 years of shipbuilding. I would have expected the First Minister to be holding a press conference to celebrate what we've done in relation to this deal. Those 15 years of shipbuilding, Mr. Speaker, are extremely important to Clyde and very other industries, and they are a reflection of the professionalism and dedication of workers in Scotland that they've shown over many, many years. And I would urge the First Minister to come forward and welcome this deal.
Sir John Hayes, final question.
I know you will agree, Mr. Speaker, that flags and banners in bringing national pride nourish individual sense of worth and nurture our shared sense of belonging. So will the Prime Minister take steps to ensure that across every part of our kingdom, alongside the Cross of St George in England, St Patrick in Wales, St Andrew in Scotland and the Red Dragon in Wales, that our flag is flown on every government and public building, hospitals, schools, police stations, railway stations? For every Briton deserves the chance to see a forest of flagpoles and the flutter of the Union Jack.
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank him? And I share his pride in our country's flag. It represents our history, our heritage and our values. And that's why we display it. And I was the Labour leader that put the Union Jack on the membership card for the Labour Party. I'm very proud to do so. It belongs to all of us. We should be proud of it and value it.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches turn up. Point of order, John MacDonald.
Mr Speaker, I'm the chair of the PCS Trade Union Group in Parliament. As members will know, PCS members from our security division, the House's security division, are taking strike action today. These are professional, dedicated and committed staff. It takes a lot to motivate them to take strike action, their sense of grievance. There's a clear difference of view between the management of the House and the union about how we've arrived at this situation. So could I use this mechanism to urge the senior management of the House to seek another meeting with the union to clarify the situation and to come up with a reasonable offer that will resolve this dispute, because I do not wish to see our dedicated staff outside of work on this basis, because they provide us with the security we need.
Yeah. Can I first of all say I thank the Honourable Member for giving notice of his point of order. Well, it's strictly not a point of order for the Chair. I would agree that it's in everyone's interest to work together to resolve matters, and I hope that we can get people round the table rather than striking. I don't want to go into further details, but I think it's better we leave it at this stage. Well, thank you very much. Right. Before we come to the 10-minute rule motion, I wish to make a short announcement about the House's sub judice resolution. A coroner's inquest has been opened into the death of Simone White, and those proceedings are now sub judice. However, given the significant public interest in addressing this matter, I, as Speaker, have decided to grant a waiver for the House's resolution relating to matters of sub judice in respect of any inquest into the deaths of UK citizens or residents from methanol poisoning overseas. Honourable members may therefore refer to the case in the course of proceedings, but I would urge them to avoid saying anything which might prejudice any future criminal or civil proceedings in the UK. I now call on Laura Trott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm grateful. I beg to move that leave be given to bring a bill to require travel assistance issued by the Secretary of State and other persons to include guidance about the risks of methanol poisoning and for connected purposes. Mr Speaker, I've been working closely on this issue on behalf of one of my constituents, Chloe Lassiter, who, alongside her family, Sue, Neil, Tom and Amanda, have been fighting to raise awareness of the dangers of methanol poisoning abroad following the tragic death of Simone White last year. As members may have seen from media coverage at the time, Simone was travelling with her friend Bethany in Laos. They were staying in a small riverside town about 2 hours north of the capital. It is a hub for backpackers travelling across Southeast Asia. It was here that Simone and her friend consumed 3 shots of alcohol offered at the hostel. The next day, both felt unwell, but they carried on with their plans. Hours later, after boarding a bus to their next destination, things worsened. Bethany fainted, Simone vomited. They were eventually taken to a local hospital, but doctors had no idea what was wrong and initially suspected food poisoning. Still confused and deteriorating, the girls made it to a private hospital. I can't imagine how frightened and confused they must have been at this point. But sadly, by then, it was too late for Simone. She started having seizures during dialysis and was eventually taken for emergency brain surgery. The surgery relieved the pressure, but caused bleeding, and the other side of her brain started to swell. The results confirming methanol poisoning were not available until 2 weeks later, but by then, Simone had sadly already passed away. While Bethany did recover following her hospitalisation, 6 other young people fell victim to suspected methanol poisoning, having drunk at the same hostel. 2 young Australians, 2 young Danish women, and an American all lost their lives. As the Australian Prime Minister said in November, this is every parent's worst nightmare. And my heart goes out to all the families who lost loved ones in the most unbelievably of tragic circumstances. Over the last year, I've learnt so much about Simone, who was a much-loved young woman. She had a brilliant life ahead of her, and it was clear from when I attended her funeral that she was deeply loved by her friends and family. Mr. Speaker, a year ago, like so many of us here, I did not know much about methanol poisoning, yet over 1,000 people die from it every single year worldwide. This is such a huge danger, but barely any of us know about it. I also went backpacking after university, but never knew about the dangers. And sadly, the same is true of so many of our young people. This must change. So, for members less aware than we should be, methanol is tasteless and is only a faint smell, making it impossible to tell if a drink has been contaminated. But when consumed, it can lead to a coma, convulsions, blindness, nervous system damage, and death. Medical specialists say drinking as little as 25 millilitres of methanol can be fatal, but it's sometimes added to drinks because it is cheaper than alcohol. Since their devastating loss, Simone's family have campaigned tirelessly to prevent similar tragedies affecting other families. Alongside Simone's friend Bethany, they've been raising awareness of the dangers of methanol poisoning, and it was an honour earlier this year to help arrange a parliamentary drop-in session on the subject alongside the member for Orpington and the member for Dartford. The family were joined by representatives from the travel industry, the National Poisons Information Service, the British Toxicology Society and the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to educate MPs, and the message was clear. Awareness saves lives, but only when government guidance is accurate, clear and consistent. Sadly, current official travel advice is falling short. In some high-risk countries, there is very little warning at all. Where advice does exist, it is vague and understated. Travellers are told that certain drinks might carry a risk or that they should exercise caution. Mr. Speaker, this is not a matter of caution. This is about a lethal and preventable danger. I appreciate that the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office has updated the health section of the travel advice on its website, but we must do more to make the warnings clearer and more explicit so the information is more readily available to everyone. The government's Travel Aware website has an informative section on methanol poisoning, but more must be done to make that advice and guidance better known to young people before they travel. As things stand, you really do have to search for it to find it. My bill, supported by the members for Orpington, Dartford, Cheadle and Lewisham, proposes a straightforward and proportionate solution. It does not attempt to police alcohol sales abroad. It does not require costly programmes or enforcement. It simply requires the government to provide prominent, clear and consistent guidance about methanol poisoning for countries where the risk is known to exist. Other governments have already taken steps to warn their citizens. Australia's Smart Traveller service provides unambiguous practical advice and reaches young travellers through targeted campaigns. We should do no less, and we must not be left behind. Families like Simone's, who have endured unimaginable grief, are not asking for the impossible. They are asking for honesty, clarity, and actionable guidance so that other families do not have to suffer the same loss. We have already shown in this House that collaboration between families, experts, and parliamentarians can and does raise awareness. Now it's time to turn awareness into action. The Minister I know is well aware of Simone's story, and we've exchanged many letters on the topic. We were kindly hosted by the Foreign Office with the member for Orpington and the family earlier this year, and I thank them for their engagement to date, and I look forward to working with them as I know they understand the grave risks that are at stake. As Simone's mother, Sue White, said herself, if it can happen to Simone, it can happen to anybody. So let's today start the process to stopping future tragedies. I commend this bill to the House.
That the Right Honourable Member have to leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the Right Honourable Member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Gareth Bacon, Jim Dixon, Tom Morrison, Vicky Foxcroft and myself.
Laura Trott.
Methanol poisoning travel advice bill.
Second reading what day?
29th of May 2026.
29th of May 2026. Right. We now come to the Opposition Day motion in the name of the Shadow Chancellor on property taxes. I have to inform the House I have not selected amendments. We now come Sir Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the motion on the order paper. I trust you had a good recess, Mr. Speaker. I'm absolutely certain that the Deputy Prime Minister also had a good recess. We saw many photographs of her down at the seaside, just off the coast, in a rubber dinghy, rather like many of the other photographs that we've seen over the summer, given the reckless policies that this government has towards illegal migration. She was probably celebrating, Mr. Speaker, the acquisition of another property for her property empire, but perhaps also slightly tinged with that nagging doubt as to whether she had indeed paid enough stamp duty. Well, we will get to the bottom of that in due course. But those, Mr. Speaker, who could not avoid paying the taxes imposed by this government are businesses right up and down our country, many of whom I took the time during the recess to visit. In the leisure sector alone, some 80,000 jobs have been destroyed by national insurance, particularly affecting those taking their first job, younger workers, part-time workers, female workers, jobs being destroyed. And while the Deputy Prime Minister was lounging on her boat with her wine, of course, this government was all at sea, like a cork bobbing on the tide, no control over the events that were swirling around them. And when it came to the economy, whilst eclipsed by the calamities around illegal migration, we saw the panicked reshuffle recently of the Treasury front bench. And I would like at this point, Mr. Speaker, to offer my congratulations to warmly welcome the Honourable Member for Chipping Barnet to his new role, but to tell him that he is joining a sinking ship in which the captain has just had all her authority stripped from her, and all his comrades down below deck are fiercely trying to bail out the situation. I'd also like to offer a fond farewell to the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Speaker, who no doubt thought he was very clever when he leapt off this sinking ship. But he won't be feeling quite so clever when he discovers that the place to which they have sent him is even more dysfunctional than the Treasury front bench. And over the summer, Mr. Speaker, amongst all this news of arrivals to our shores, we've had a cruel summer of speculation around tax. We've seen in those skies clouds of kites flown largely by the Treasury as to what taxes they are going to be putting up. It's all been tax, tax and tax. I'm reminded, Mr. Speaker, of the Beatles and the tax man. I'll tax the street. If you try to sit up, I'll tax your seat. If you get too cold, I'll tax the heat. If you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. When it comes to tax, Mr. Speaker, it's not so much good day sunshine as help. OK, it was a bit hammy, but it was worth a try. I was going to try, actually, Mr. Speaker, Penny Lane as well, but I drew the line at that. But, Mr. Speaker, it is worth examining how we got to this point, for a reckoning for our country is surely coming. This will be a story for all time. It started, I will momentarily, it started with broken promises. This was a party that said during the run-up to the general election that they had no intention of raising taxes left, right and centre, and yet within a month or two they did precisely that, with devastating consequences. Tax rises on businesses that stifled growth. They talked down the economy. They talked down the economy by confecting this £22 billion black hole that did not exist. And what irony that it was they that brought in the OBR to decide whether that £22 billion black hole existed, and it was the OBR themselves that said they could not legitimise that claim. They were wrong.
That's what he said.
And what happened with spending and borrowing? It got completely out of control. And the combination of passing on price rises because of the national insurance increases and the extra borrowing and spending has been higher inflation. We are an outlier, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to inflation, in a moment. And that in turn has seen interest rates higher for longer and the servicing costs on our national debt now running at over £100 billion a year, that being over twice what we spend on defence. And I will give way to whoever it was behind me. Yes.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way. Would he agree with me that this loss of market confidence demands decisive action from the government at the budget to correct it, and that decisive action cannot solely be taken on the tax side, because the tax side is what's driven us into this loop. We need decisive action on spending, and particularly on welfare, if we're to see some restoration of market confidence and to get ourselves out of this rut.
My right honourable friend, as ever, is absolutely right. The reality is, and you see it in the bond yields that there are at the moment, that the markets have no confidence in the ability of this government to actually get on top of spending. And we saw the farce of a government that came to office scrapping the £5 billion worth of welfare savings that were already baked into the OBR's scorecard because we had brought them in, attempting then to bring forward their own reforms and their own backbenchers then voting them down. This government does not have the will or the plan to deal with spending. And that is at the heart, and this is where my right honourable friend is so right, at the heart of the reason why we will all be punished and pay the price of more taxes come the budget in November. I'll give way to the
Mr. Speaker, can I commend the Shadow Minister for bringing this forward? The Shadow Minister has quite clearly shared the deep concern that I have, and I think everybody in this chamber should have, that government is considering further taxing property, despite that the Prime Minister committed to not impose capital gains tax on residents of this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Last year it was a family inheritance tax. This year, those who own property, those who have skimped and saved to have their house, those middle class, those hard workers who have now become the latest target of Labour tax policy.
Well, the right honourable gentleman is entirely right. Of course, if you get into a situation where you are having to scrabble around and look at property taxes, as we will be debating this afternoon, then really nothing is safe from the taxman under this government. I think there was somebody else trying to intervene. Yes, good way to do it.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Could I gently remind him that since this Labour government came to power, interest rates have been cut 5 times. A vote of confidence in our Chancellor, fixing the foundations of our economy, saving an average family on an average tracker mortgage in my constituency over £100 a month. Can he remind me what happened to interest rates when his party was in power?
As the honourable lady will know, interest rates are one of the key tools in monetary policy, and they are applied to bring down inflation. And whilst there have been 5 reductions, and she is right, in the level of the base rate, there should have been many more reductions. And the reason is, the evidence is there, the reason is that this government has stoked inflation. We have inflation that is still been rising. It is at twice the level, or thereabouts, that it was on the day of the last general election. And when a government stokes inflation, you pay the price through higher interest rates, and that is precisely what has been happening. But I'll give way to
my right honourable friend, and he's right to highlight the massive impact of these tax rises on so many families up and down this country, and businesses too. Can he comment, please, on how we can have a Deputy Prime Minister in a government who has admitted avoiding paying the tax that she owed and continues in office, and this from a party which moved to call for the resignation of people for far lower offences than that, and as if not expose the rank hypocrisy which seems to run right through the government opposite.
If the right honourable lady wants to make the rules, she should live by them. And that will be a message which will go out to businesses and families right up and down this country. There is no way that they can avoid the juggernaut of taxes that are coming down the track. I will give way to the right honourable gentleman.
And in return for his generosity, I'm going to say something pleasant about the last Conservative government. I know, wait for it. And the last, wait for it. Just the one thing. The last government allowed councils like Westmoreland Furness, run by the Liberal Democrats, to double council tax on second homes. It is right to do that because excessive second home ownership absolutely annihilates communities in the Lakes and the Dales, the West Country and elsewhere. But can I encourage his party and the party in government now to do something we should do much more to limit the number of second homes than that, and that is to bring in a new planning category of use so that, like the national parks and councils, can manage the numbers and save communities.
Well, I thank him for his intervention. I thank him for his kind words about the Conservative Party as well. I'm sure they're deeply felt and very, very genuine. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, is that what the Deputy Prime Minister should be doing is delivering more homes. And it is quite clear that the 1.5 million homes that they are claiming they will be delivering at the rate of 300,000 a year is not going to be met. And I'm quite happy at some point in the future to be proven wrong, but I very much suspect that unfortunately I will not be. But Mr. Speaker, where we have ended up is in a situation where we have a huge black hole looming. The National Institute for Economic and Social Research puts that at possibly as much as £40 billion. This is a recurrent theme with the economic mismanagement of the party opposite. In the October budget, the first budget, there was headroom of around £10 billion against the fiscal rule. That was blown, and £4 billion more by the time of the spring statement, the emergency budget in the spring. And once again, it appears that even that, and considerably more, has been blown all over again. And that is no surprise when it came to the U-turn on winter fuel payments, when it came on to the U-turn on the welfare reforms that we've already discussed in this debate. That led to unfunded commitments of around £6 billion. Unfunded commitments that the Chancellor said the Labour Party would never find themselves in that situation. That has simply not happened. And what signal does it send to the markets that this government cannot control spending? And in the long term, it will be interesting to see what the ABR has to say about their forecasts for growth going forward. And we've seen 30-year bond yields now, Mr. Speaker, in recent times hitting a 27-year high. We are paying more on our borrowing than Greece. There is potentially now a debt crisis looming. This country could be on the brink, and it is all on their watch. I'll certainly give way to the honourable gentleman.
Of course, this government inherited higher bond yields than many other countries. And right now, bond yields are going up in Japan, Germany, United States. Is the Chancellor responsible for all of this?
Well, there's no doubt that under the last government there was a need to support the economy, and that, for example, involved the expenditure of £400 billion, not least on the furlough scheme, which, and I don't remember his party at the time saying that we shouldn't do that. They were actually arguing we should go still further than that. And this, the Conservative government stepped in and supported jobs and saved us going into the kind of mass unemployment that many feared, worse than even the 1980s. And I take great pride in that. But we are where we are now, and what this government should be doing is growing this economy, stoking up business sentiment, getting taxes down, and getting the economy moving. And it is doing precisely the opposite. I give way to my friend.
I'm grateful to the Shadow Secretary of State for giving way. And isn't the key point here, and the difference here, is that we are seeing stagflation, so high inflation and the economy not growing in the way in which it should be. Therefore, we are getting the job losses that we're seeing and unemployment going up every month under this Labour government. Unless the government does something drastically different, this is only going to get worse rather than get better, which impacts our growth prospects and therefore our prosperity, not only of our nation, nation, but the individuals who work and try to thrive here.
Right, my honourable friend is absolutely right. We're seeing high inflation, we're seeing anemic growth, we're seeing high gilt yields, we're seeing a pound that has been plummeting in recent times, and all of those are signals on the dashboard that are flashing red. Instead of getting a grip on spending and getting taxes down, this government has been out there pitch rolling yet more taxes. And over the summer, we have seen the briefings into the press have suggested tax rises on property. And the party opposite has an opportunity this afternoon to rule those possibilities out. And we should look to the Minister, when he responds, to do just that. Firstly, there has been the suggestion, Mr. Speaker, that there will be changes to private residence relief under the capital gains tax regime. Something that would strike right at the heart of our country as a property-owning democracy. People being penalised simply for selling up and moving home. It would have clear implications for bunging up the property market. It would have clear economic implications for causing friction in the process of people moving from one part of the country to the other, often in search of work. And it would mean that where downsizing would be beneficial in providing more homes for people to live in, it would discourage that. Now, the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, before the election, said that there never was a policy of this type, so it doesn't need ruling out. But let's rule it out in case anyone pretends that there was. So perhaps I could ask the Minister, when he responds, to confirm that he still stands by the words of the Prime Minister. Secondly, an annual tax on homes. What a tax on aspiration. What a tax on those people who have saved hard, managed to get onto the property ladder, and are then stuck with annual taxes. What about those who are asset rich but income poor and can't afford to pay them? Are they expected to sell up? Will the Minister, when he comes to the dispatch box, rule that possibility out and keep people's minds at rest? And if that was not enough, Mr. Speaker, we hear also that it may be that we'll be looking at changes to the gifting regime within inheritance tax. They're not content just to pulverise the farmers. They're not content just to pulverise the family businesses, seeing those businesses and farms broken up when they're passed on from one generation to another because of the imposition of the tax, something which in fact it was a Labour government back in the 1970s that brought in the reliefs that this government has now chosen to abolish. I will in just a second. Inheritance tax is going to double in terms of its yield over this Parliament. And we say enough is enough on this side of the House. We should not be punishing parents who wish to pass something on to their children. Socialists do not understand. We do not all stand as atomised individuals. We work together as families, as communities. We care about each other. We care about the people we love. And it is right that we have the opportunity to pass something on to them. And I give way to...
I thank the Shadow Chancellor and for bringing this debate as well. It's such an important issue. Properties and assets are vital to the country, to people in the country. But specifically on the lifetime limit for inheritance tax and passing on, everyone will have heard over the last year the government telling farmers, telling family businesses that they need to get their affairs in order, that they need to plan. The lifetime cap, the limit, not having a limit on the lifetime cap was what allowed them to plan. If that is cut, if the cap is not in the right place, that negates every argument that the government have had in the last year as to why they think they could justify the family farm and family business tax. In responding, can the Minister please acknowledge this and rule out any change to that cap which will penalise these family farms and family businesses?
The Honourable Lady has put it brilliantly and succinctly. She is absolutely right. In their horror, in their recoil at some of the inheritance tax changes, that's exactly what farmers and family business owners have been doing. They've been thinking about the alternatives, and the 7-year rule has been exactly one of those alternatives. And it would be really heartless, an extraordinarily cruel moment if this government were now to shut that down as well. I certainly give way to my...
Very grateful to my right honourable friend, and he's explaining the situation in his usual powerful way. If, as seems likely, this government does impose capital gains tax on a person's principal private residence, will he then, as mitigation, consider whether there should be indexation allowance, at least, to provide some relief to the horror that I fear is about to be inflicted on my constituents? And my right honourable friend will remember that the Finance Act of 2008 abolished that relief on other property. I suspect the government will not be sympathetic to such a suggestion, given what happened in 2008, but at least it would take the edge off the imposition of taxes on the sale of a person's principal private residence.
Right honourable friend raises his point in his usual very eloquent manner, and that is a question for the Minister. And perhaps when the Minister rises to the dispatch box, he can hopefully rule out our concerns in their entirety. But in the event that he cannot, perhaps he would choose to answer the right honourable gentleman's inquiry. Is it not the case, Mr. Speaker, that there is a clear misunderstanding from the party opposite because they have no business experience? There is no business experience on the front bench of the government when it comes to setting up companies, understanding the meaning of business taxes. It's simply not there. And that Labour will, of course, be talking now about taxing wealth. Do they not understand that if you tax wealth, you will get less of it? It is estimated, Mr. Speaker, that around 15,000 high net worth individuals have left our country under the period in which this government has been in power. And a consequence of that is that the tax that just walked out the door will require something around 1/3 to 500,000 people on average earnings to make up the difference. It is not a case of good riddance to wealth, Mr. Speaker. It is a case of we should, as this party will, be the party that encourages and turbocharges it at every turn. If I'm an honourable friend, I will certainly give way. Thank you.
I'm sure Hansard will correct me. My honourable friend just made some comments around high net worth, high value individuals. I'm particularly interested in my constituency about individuals on low incomes, representing a city in Peterborough with one of the highest levels of 0 hours and chronically insecure work in the thing. Does he not agree that his party often wants all of the spending but none of the delivery for the funding to do that? He's talked about reducing taxation on some of the higher net worth. Could he also talk about which doctors' surgeries in my constituency would receive cuts under his plans, which individuals would receive no protection from employment rights, and how the people of Peterborough will be worse off because he wants to reduce the spending which will fix the foundations of this country?
Well, the honourable gentleman refers to spending and cutting spending. His party attempted to cut spending, of course, and entirely failed to do so. And my point is, if he wants money to spend on public services, he does need, the honourable gentleman should worry about cutting welfare. And I don't know how the honourable gentleman voted when it came to putting that to the test in this House. But if he in any way voted against his own government and getting on top of the welfare bill, then he should ask that his question of himself. When it comes to, when it comes to those on low incomes, they are precisely the people who are being devastated now by the national insurance increase. Because what we know is it's not just an increase in the rate, it's been a substantial reduction in the threshold at which national insurance now kicks in. And that has meant higher unemployment, particularly amongst younger workers, amongst part-time workers, amongst women, amongst people getting that vital first job so they can get themselves on a career path. They are the people that his government is punishing most. And I give way to my honourable friend.
I'm grateful to the Shadow Chancellor for giving way. And isn't this exactly the point, that 1% of income tax is paid for by the, 1% of the top earners pay almost 30% of income tax. So if we lose those people, we damage the very people who need the support and the investment from the very taxpayers that we've just scared off. Shouldn't the reverse be happening? The reverse happen. We attract more people into this country to spend more money, to be able to have more money for those services through tax collection.
Yeah, the honourable gentleman is absolutely right, and I have already shared with the House, Mr. Speaker, that classic example of the number of people who have left this country because of a punitive tax regime and the cost that it leads to. I will give way to my right honourable friend and then to the...
my honourable friend's... Thank you. To further to my honourable friend's excellent point, that the party opposite denigrate wealthy individuals that choose to come to this country. It's not just the tax that they provide, it's the jobs and opportunities they create by investing in constituencies up and down the country. This country has prospered for hundreds of years by being open and welcoming to inward investment. If we lose that, we lose a key plank of the competitiveness and growth that we have associated with our economy.
Right, we live in a highly mobile world, Mr. Speaker. It is quite easy for people with substantial wealth or money to invest to go anywhere in the world. We have to remain competitive, and this government is making us less competitive. Now, my right honourable friend mentions unemployment. Just look at the record. Should we really have expected any more from this government? No, not really. Every single Labour government in history has left unemployment higher when they left office than it was at the time that they came into office. And what have we seen on unemployment since this government's been in office? It's increased every single month since they've been in power. I give way to the honourable lady.
I thank him for giving way. He has spent the last 5 minutes circling around figures gathered by a consultancy that aids the super wealthy to migrate from this country. So I ask him, where is the Conservative Party getting its economic ideas from? Because it speaks volumes that he has spent so much of this point speaking for the 15,000 high net worth individuals who are served by that consultancy. The previous point speaking about inheritance taxes, which is only paid by 4% of all estates in the UK. What will the Conservative Party do, if he has any ideas, to grow the economy for the benefit of all people in this country?
The honourable lady asked where we're getting our ideas from. Where we are not getting them from are academics and researchers who believe in taxing wealth and who are now sitting there on the Treasury front bench or in places where they're advising elsewhere in and around number 10, and who talk on a regular basis about taxing property and taxing wealth and taxing shares and taxing assets of any description that they can think of. That is the road to ruin. And she asked where we get our ideas. I'll tell her where we get our ideas from. I set up my own business in the 1980s from absolutely nothing. And I grew it from scratch. And then I took it over to America and I grew a business there. And I have lived, breathed and eaten business most of my life. And I go up and down the country and I speak to those businesses, and they are the people that understand what needs to be done on the tax front. They're the people that have to live with the red tape that her party is bringing in to tie them down. So they're the people that this party is listening to. I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. He has talked at great length about taxing the wealthy. He's omitted one of the suggestions that has come forth over the summer, which is getting rid of the punitive council tax system that taxes poverty and deprivation in this country. The former Conservative leader of Hartlepool Borough Council famously cheered when he put up council tax on deprived people in Hartlepool. Why is the Conservative Party, and now Reform as he's defected to Reform, so attached to this regressive system?
Mr. Speaker, I think all systems like council tax or different variants on it and revaluations and things that government should look at, because we don't want them to be entirely static and they're always there for reform and change. But I would just observe that when it comes to the level of council tax to which the honourable gentleman referred, if you take the average council tax paid in Labour areas, it is demonstrably higher than the equivalent taxes in Conservative areas. And that comes down to the approach that a Conservative council takes to spending, to making sure councils are efficiently run, and the profligate approach of the party opposite. I'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
I thank the honourable member for giving way. One of the suggestions this government heard earlier this year was from Conservative-run Hampshire County Council, who suggested that they increase the council tax of my constituents by 15%, which was blocked by this government and the Secretary of State. Will he join me in condemning that proposal by the Conservative-run Hampshire County Council to increase council tax by 15%?
I'm not going to get into specific things going on in his area. Why would I be expected? why would I be expected to opine with authority on something relating to his constituency of that nature? But my general point, hold on, my general point stands. My general point stands that it is a simple fact, that Labour-controlled local authorities charge more for council tax than Conservative-run councils. I'll give way to the honourable lady.
Can I just say that, please, you can't just hang up in the air. If it's going to give way, please. Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, that is not a fact. The reality is, in my region, Milton Keynes, the Labour-run local authority, has lower taxes than all the surrounding Tory authorities, including Northamptonshire, which has failed over and over again, now two Conservative, now Reform councils that have failed, and Buckinghamshire. Milton Keynes has been labelled by the LGA as one of the best-run councils and still delivers lower council tax than all those Tory-run authorities.
The point of, as a simple matter of logic, even if the honourable lady's assertion were true, and I don't know whether it's true or not, it does not actually contradict the point that I made, and that is the point. Now, is there somebody that was waiting? Yeah.
Chancellor, just say, wasn't it that this Prime Minister currently who said not a penny more on council tax when he came through? Is the Shadow Chancellor aware of how that worked out?
The word badly. Anyway, yes, the honourable gentleman. Yeah.
I did just want to return to the point the honourable member made a moment ago. He suggested he's not going to get into speculation. I mean, this whole debate is premised on media speculation. And yet I'm asking the honourable member to comment on an actual proposal that was made to the government to increase local council tax for my constituents by 15% by a Conservative-run county council. So he asked us to vote on media speculation, but he won't comment on an actual proposal.
The point is, Mr. Speaker, very clear, and I think I do need to now start to make some progress as well, and have been fairly generous in taking interventions, is, as I say, that when it comes to council tax, it is a fact that Conservative-controlled councils charge less. And they do that because their whole approach to running the council, as ours is in terms of our approach to running an economy, is to make sure it's done efficiently, and we do not impose undue burdens on people by way of tax. But, Mr. Speaker, we were told when it comes to tax by the Chancellor back in that first budget in the autumn that those tax hikes were a once-in-a-Parliament event. It's now not a question of whether there will be further tax increases. It's a question of which taxes. And the uncertainty that has flowed from this disastrous situation over the summer has meant that there has been a hold on businesses investing, on property transactions, on choices, and in many ways, in a fundamental way, on some of the freedoms, actually, that we as citizens take often for granted. And that is because of Labour's choices. Mr. Speaker, the party opposite will desperately dismiss all of this as press speculation, and I expect to hear that from the Minister in a moment. But it's not the truth that this sorry tale is entirely of their own making. The inevitable result of their choices and the failure that has followed, with much of this speculation seeming to be fuelled by briefings from within government itself. This House, Mr. Speaker, and the public deserve answers. The Chancellor cannot borrow more and has shown no ability to control spending. That can only leave tax. But which taxes will it be? Are family homes safe, or are they simply fair game? Mr. Speaker, if the Labour Party failed to vote for the simple motion we have before us today, then it will be clear what the answer is. Under this Labour government, nothing is safe. Not your home, not your pension, not your savings, not your business, not your farm, not that which you simply wish to pass on to your own children. The message to hard-working people up and down our country could not be clearer. Labour will always duck the hard choices. They will tax the living daylights out of your family's future to pay for their failure.
Sorry? I hope somebody wasn't to say hypocrisy. I'm sure it wasn't the case. The question is, as on the order paper, I now call the Chief Secretary. Congratulations on your promotion, James Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Right Honourable Member for Central Devon for opening this debate. I can see he spent his summer polishing some of his rhetorical flourishes, which he's shared with us today. He maybe could have spent his time rather better, I would suggest. But, Mr. Speaker, thank you for your words of congratulations. It's a real honour to be here as Chief Secretary to the Treasury. And may I put on record my tribute to my predecessor, the now Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, for all of his fantastic work, notably delivering the spending review, and to welcome my friend, the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, to his new role. It is a role that I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I'm sure he will be excellent in that role. Now, Mr. Speaker, honourable members opposite will appreciate that the motion itself, as they have tabled before the House today, is one that simply cannot form the basis itself for a specific debate on individual tax measures. Members across this House will know that the government does not respond to speculation in advance of a budget, which the Chancellor has today announced will take place on November the 26th. This has long been the case, Mr. Speaker, and the Right Honourable Member for Central Devon knows it well, and he knows it would be irresponsible to engage in that speculation. So, Mr. Speaker, whatever political rhetoric he and his colleagues will use in today's debate, and no matter how many variants of the same questions we hear in today's debate, I know that he will understand that I cannot engage with speculation about individual tax measures ahead of the budget.
For the Right Honourable Gentleman for giving way. He says that he will not speculate, he cannot speculate on individual tax messages. Will he then deny that the number 11 machine has not been leaking these stories to the national press over the summer?
Mr. Speaker, I am not going to engage in speculation or any of the mechanics around that. And the honourable member, and indeed all honourable members opposite, will simply have to wait until November the 26th to see the specifics of the budget at that point. And at that point, I'm sure he and his colleagues will have plenty to say. I'll give way.
By genuinely congratulating the new Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and I've always found him an honest and straightforward Speaker in the House. I think he deserves his position. On that point, not on a point of speculation, can he confirm reports that the government is looking again at welfare? Because surely he will agree with me that in any process of fiscal consolidation, one must look to tax rises and to spending cuts. There's been a lot of reporting about there being further measures on welfare. Yes or no, will there be further measures on welfare under consideration?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Right Honourable Member for his kind words. But as you will know, there are already welfare measures both going through Parliament and being investigated by my Right Honourable friend in the Department for Work and Pensions through the review that he's undertaking. So this government is determined to make sure that the safety net is there for people who need it, but that people who can work have the support they need to get and maintain a job. Now, I will give way.
For giving way. What isn't speculation is that the largest rise in property taxes happened under the Conservatives when Liz Truss crashed the economy and increased interest rates for everyone in my constituency. But will the Minister, on a point of principle, speak to the fact that there are different parts of the country with different house prices, and that must be reflected in Treasury thinking when it comes to thinking about tax and the budget this year?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The honourable gentleman is, of course, absolutely right to remind everyone of the record under the short-lived Prime Minister Liz Truss when the people opposite were in power. I noticed they don't refer to that themselves when evaluating the economic situation, but it is something the British people will not forget. And to his wider point around housing across the country, what we want to do, Madam Deputy Speaker, is to ensure that we are building homes, affordable homes, in every part of this country. And that is why one of the priorities of this government has been to reform the planning system to enable the building of 1.5 million homes, to make sure that every community has those homes, that people have homes they can afford to live in the area where they grew up, where they live, and where they want to go to work. And that is the central mission of this government. I will give way one more time, then I'll make some progress.
Thank you very much for giving way. As just pointed out there, but the government is hoping to build all those new homes, obviously with the intent that They recognise how important a home is to someone, the value of a home to a family. On that, and on the principle, because obviously he's said he won't talk on the specifics, but on the principle of that, does he therefore recognise that taxing people's homes is something that we really should not be pursuing if we are a country truly that values home ownership?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I gently remind the honourable member that council tax exists in this country, which is, of course, a tax on properties of some sort. So the principle of having some taxes applied to property is well established in the UK and has been for some time. But the honourable lady is trying to tempt me to engage in more speculation. As I said in my remarks earlier to the right honourable member for Central Devon, I'm not going to engage in speculation about what may or may not be in the budget, because, Madam, I'll give way to my honourable friend.
I thank the Minister for giving way. He's always very generous with his time, and I congratulate him on his well-deserved promotion. The party opposite are not a fan of tax, but sadly they're also not a fan of actually supporting public services. Under their government, thousands of HMRC compliance officers, including my mum, were made redundant, and actually we weren't able to collect the amount of tax that actually people owed. Is that partly why we've got such a black hole in finances that this government inherited?
A few colleagues hoping to contribute. Intervention should be short, and the Minister should be aware of that, considering how much longer he may wish to contribute himself.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Hint taken on that. I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and may I thank his mother for her service to HMRC in the past, because people at HMRC do an absolutely critical job in collecting the tax, which is important to fund our public services and to make sure our economy functions effectively. And one of the priorities we've had as a government is to close the tax gap, which existed under the previous government. And indeed, at the budget last year and the spring statement earlier this year, we set out plans to raise an additional £7.5 billion in additional tax revenue as a result of hiring people to do those really important jobs, as well as investing in new technology and modernising the service to make sure that people pay the tax that they owe. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm going to make some progress because I said I would a few moments ago, and I've been gently reminded by Madam Deputy Speaker that I really must live to my promise on that front. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are questions which the Right Honourable Member for Central Devon is asking today, and he asked in his opening remarks, and his colleagues with their sheets from the whips have been dutifully following up on in their comments as well, but they are matters which we cannot talk about today. There are, of course, other important facts which he does not want to talk about, but which the British people have not forgotten. The £22 billion black hole in our public finances, which the previous government hid from the light. The disastrous mini-budget, which caused damage to households across the country and to our reputation around the world. Stalled housing, unfinished infrastructure, public services brought to their knees by underinvestment and disinterest. They do not want to talk about these things, Madam Deputy Speaker, because, of course, they are the legacy of the last government. And we just found out today that the Right Honourable Gentleman does not even want to talk about things happening by Conservative councils, as my honourable friend, the member for Basingstoke, raised so importantly in his contribution earlier. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, now they are in opposition, his party and those in Reform are talking Britain down. They want to claim that Britain is broken. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe that Britain is unbreakable. Our country is full of potential, home to hard-working people, brilliant businesses, world-leading universities and research institutions, cultural giants, and the promise that if you work hard and contribute to the country, it will be a place where you can succeed. Yet undeniably, Madam Deputy Speaker, after 14 years of Tory mismanagement, far too many working people feel that the economy is stuck. I hear from constituents, I've been asked by Madam Deputy Speaker to make some progress, so I'll return to the honourable gentleman a little later. I hear it from my constituents, Madam Deputy Speaker, as I'm sure many other people in this chamber do. They tell us that no matter how much effort they put in, no matter the effort they put in at work, the careful management of household finances and the diligent efforts to save for a brighter future, they do not yet feel they are getting enough in return, and it has become harder to get ahead. At the same time, our roads and railways seem slow and less reliable, and our classrooms seem fuller, whilst the NHS has a massive backlog. The root cause of all this is the chronic underinvestment by the previous government. That underinvestment over many years has slowed our productivity growth to a rate not seen since the Napoleonic Wars. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, members opposite... I'll give way.
Can I thank the Minister very much for giving way? Would he agree with me
that thanks to the tight fiscal rules that this government has introduced and the changes in the budget, my residents in Dartford since the election have seen an investment in the Lower Thames crossing, something that they've wanted for 15 years and wasn't delivered under the last government, a £25 million hospital rebuilding project at Darrant Valley, and a structures fund, a £1 billion DFT structures fund, which will repair the ruined Galley Hill Road in my Dartford constituency. It's only thanks to the government's rules and its budget changes that we see these changes. Is that not right, the Minister?
Yeah. I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and he's absolutely right that it is only thanks to the fiscal rules which the Chancellor introduced at last year's budget and our decisions, the right decisions, to make sure those fiscal rules are non-negotiable and that we keep to them at every stage. It is only because of those decisions that we have been able to boost investment by £120 billion over the course of this Parliament in many of the projects, including those which he mentioned and those in constituencies right across the country. And that is the right thing for our country. We were just talking about chronic underinvestment. We are tackling that, both through making sure that the government invests across the country and that we encourage private sector investment to get businesses across Britain growing. A very short one, and then I really will make progress.
Thank you very much. Would the Minister agree that taxation is intrinsically linked to economic growth and there already are green shoots of recovery in the economy with 3 trade deals and 5 interest rate cuts? Thank you.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and she's absolutely right that critical to our plans is, of course, economic growth. She pointed to the trade deals we secured, and of course she will know, as other honourable members will also, that the UK was the fastest growing G7 economy in the first half of this year. So there is much more for us to do, but we are showing that because of the right decisions that we have taken, we are starting to move in the right direction. I'm going to make... Oh, I probably should. OK, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll give way one more time, then I promise. Very generous.
I don't want him to speculate, but I do want him to consider. But I do want him to consider something. And we talked about people not paying taxes. A significant minority of second homeowners in my constituency let their property out for just a few days a year, and as a result can claim to be a small business, pay no council tax, and pay no business rates. So people working on the minimum wage in my constituency are subsidising those people to pay no council tax at all. Will he change that situation to protect our communities?
I think I should congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman for an inventive way of encouraging me to speculate on tax measures. I can say to him that I'm aware of the issue which he points to, and I thank him for raising it in this context, but of course I'm not able to make any decisions on taxation at the dispatch box today. Madam Deputy Speaker, going back briefly to the broader context, because it's absolutely crystal clear, both from the Right Honourable Gentleman's opening remarks and indeed what all of his colleagues have been saying so far, that members opposite are still in total denial about any responsibility they have for the situation the country finds itself in. They act as if being behind the wheel for 14 years is irrelevant to where we find ourselves now. It may be that they think that if they don't talk about it, the British people may forget the last government's responsibility for getting us into the current situation. But the British people know that the Conservatives did this to our country, and that is why, at the last election, they put our faith in us. And whilst there is clearly more to do to bring down inflation and the cost of borrowing, it is also clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we have turned a corner by taking the right decisions for our country. We have taken the decisions to address the black hole in the public finances, to fix our foundations, and to clear up the mess we inherited from the previous government. And as a consequence, as I mentioned a moment ago, in the first half of this year, we were the fastest growing economy in the G7. We outpaced France, Germany, Japan, and the United States. Since taking office, this government has welcomed around £100 billion of investment into the UK, with 384,000 jobs being created over the same period. We have cut red tape and changed planning regulations to deliver 1.5 million new homes over the course of this Parliament, and already nearly 100,000 new homes on large developments that were previously stuck in the planning system, or which were simply not progressing as fast as they should be, are now being given the support they need to make that progress quickly. In just over a year, Bank of England has cut interest rates 5 times, a fact that means that someone on a tracker mortgage of just over £200,000 will be around £100 a month better off. And crucially, Madam Deputy Speaker, real wages have risen more in the time since the last election than they did in the first 10 years of the previous government. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, the choice at the next budget is clear. Over 14 years, the last government made wrong choices time and again. Their many prime ministers and their many chancellors all embraced a cycle of austerity, debt and decline. We will never repeat that. We will continue to invest in Britain's renewal, using every power at our disposal to drive forward an economy that works for working people. And as I said, Madam Deputy Speaker, the government does not respond to speculation, especially ahead of a budget. And in any case, we're not writing a budget this far out. The budget the Chancellor delivers in November will be carefully considered and designed to get the balance right between making working people better off, raising enough money to fund our public services, and to get the country moving once again through investment and growth. And of course, it will undergo proper scrutiny from the OBR. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was going to briefly address the taxes which are in the motion, but I suspect I should skip over this part of the speech. I'm getting a gentle indication from you that I have come to the right conclusion there. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, to conclude, if we are to get this country moving again, then investment, both from businesses and from government, is essential. We must therefore strike the right balance in our tax system so that we can put more money in the pockets of working people while supporting the private sector to invest and grow and funding our public services. Members on both sides of the House will have their own views on what that right balance is, and I look forward to hearing those views today, and may I thank all honourable and right honourable members in advance for their contributions.
And before I call the Liberal Democrat spokesperson Daisy Cooper, all backbenchers will be on a time limit of 4 minutes. That's 4 minutes. And I call Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and may I start by adding my voice and that of my party to others who have welcomed the honourable member for Kemi Badenoch to the front bench. Madam Deputy Speaker, property taxes in this country, like so many other things, are broken and are hopelessly out of date. Council tax is regressive, stamp duty is a transaction tax that slows growth, and business rates are a tax on bricks and mortar that bears no relationship whatsoever to the amount of money that a business might make. I have to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that it is quite extraordinary, I think, that the official opposition have chosen to debate property taxes, given that I can barely remember any discussion at all in the last Parliament about things that they wanted to tackle, and they particularly didn't tackle any of those three. So if it is true that the Labour government is now thinking about biting the bullet and looking at bringing forward fairer alternatives to these, then I commend them for looking at this issue. But I would caution the government. We do not want to see a repeat of the jobs tax fiasco. Going after property simply as a Treasury tax grab would be a disaster if the government does not set out a broader vision for housing as a whole and for property taxation. Now, we agree with parts of the Conservatives' motion today. We agree with their call to rule out capital gains tax on primary residences. In the general election, we Liberal Democrats set out a way of reforming capital gains tax in a way which would be fairer. It would reduce capital gains for 2/3 of people already paying it, it would increase it for the super wealthy, and it would have raised more revenue than from the measures, the carte blanche measures that the Labour government have pursued. So we agree with that. We also agree with the Conservatives that the property levy, as has been described in newspapers, would be a disaster. It would choke up the housing market, it would stop people from downsizing, it would slow economic growth. And so I hope that if ministers are indeed considering any of these things, that they look at the reaction of... I would give way.
In my constituency of Henley and Tame, the average house price is £515,000. Would she agree with me that the property tax, as described by the government so far, would in fact be a tax on the South East and London?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and he will know, as I do in my own constituency of St Albans, that there are many people who have spent decades and decades and decades living in their property. They might have bought it for a few £1,000s. Now it may be worth a huge amount, but they might be asset rich and cash poor. And for people in those situations in particular, they are incredibly scared at reports that they have seen in newspapers about a potential tax, as has been described. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are parts of the Conservatives' motion that we agree with. However, we are open to the idea in principle of a land value tax, because land value taxes can, in principle, create more fairness in the system, and they can produce a more efficient use of land. But of course the devil is always in the detail, and so it would depend on the design of any particular land value tax and any exemptions that might be introduced. We Liberal Democrats have set out policies before about how we would replace the broken business rates system and replace it with a commercial landowner levy. This is an example of how the principle of land value could be applied to commercial land. It's potentially
will my
also...
right honourable friend give way?
I will give way.
Thank you. Many tourism industry businesses in Torbay raise concerns around Airbnb and their impact both on safety and legality. Surely the government should be publishing their long-awaited short-term let registration scheme with a matter of urgency. Thank you.
I absolutely could not agree with my honourable friend more. I absolutely would love to see this registration programme, but we Liberal Democrats have repeatedly said that that is only the first step. Registration is actually something that the Airbnb-type platforms want to see because it actually enables them to go and pinch properties from other platforms. It doesn't solve the problem which we have of lots of additional homes being used for Airbnbs, but not being used by young people and, in fact, anybody who wants to be able to rent a property in their area. And it's important that local authorities have the power to get the balance between tourism and having the people they need in their local area who can afford to live there.
On that point, she might give way.
I will give way.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to her for giving way, and she makes an extremely good point there. In my constituency, we have seen a collapse of the long-term private rented sector, which has pushed hundreds of people in our communities out of our communities, not able to contribute or be part of the workforce or send their children to our schools. An answer, surely, is to be able to create short-term lets as a separate category of planning use, just as we're calling for with second homes. That would allow councils and national parks to make sure there's enough homes for local people to live in.
Again, I agree with my honourable friend, and I will recall, as I'm sure he does, that in the previous Parliament there were a number of amendments that we had tabled to pieces of legislation that the Conservatives had tabled, where we Liberal Democrats had tried to make that happen, but unfortunately they were not accepted by the now official opposition. Madam Deputy Speaker, going back to land value tax, it's also, in principle, something that could help with land banking. Now, all of us in this House say that we want to build on brownfield first, but of course part of the problem is that big developers can land bank, and we Liberal Democrats have repeatedly tried to table amendments or introduce new laws to ensure that local authorities can buy that land at the land value rather than at the hope value by changing the way that our legislation works. So I think there are, in principle, some merits to at least considering a land value tax. But of course, as I say, the devil will be in the detail. And if the government does bring forward any proposals, we will scrutinise them closely when they do. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is a couple of major omissions in the official opposition's motion. One is on business rates, as I've already outlined. Business rates are, in fact, a property tax facing small businesses. The business rates is a broken system. We've heard repeated promises from the previous government and now this one about fixing business rates. And it's incredibly disappointing that as yet we have not seen the ambition to replace business rates as a system, instead tinkering around the edges and under the current government's proposals potentially making them a little bit worse and targeting hospitality in particular. But another major omission is giving local authorities those real powers to regulate the location and the number of short-term lets, particularly as they affect people in the southwest, Cumbria and many other areas. I will give one.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Queen Camel Community Land Trust is working to create much-needed homes in South Somerset, but they're often hampered by access to finance and an outdated planning system. So does my honourable friend agree with me that this government should focus on community-led development to deliver the much-needed affordable homes, homes that the community will actually appreciate and they want in their areas?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend. Today we're discussing property taxation, but of course taxation on its own, without a broader vision for property, may well lead us down the track of having the same kind of jobs tax fiasco that we've had before. And there absolutely should be a community-led planning system rather than the top-down planning system that we've had under the previous government and under this one too. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I know in my own constituency of St Albans, just to finish, that this particular issue of Airbnbs is a real problem. Under a previous Conservative housing secretary, there was the approval for offices to be turned into blocks of flats, but no powers were given to local authorities to control how that could happen. And that now does mean that in my constituency, many young people can't actually, if they get a job in my constituency, they can't afford to have that job unless they're living with mum and dad. They can't afford to even rent a place, let alone even get on the housing ladder in the first place. And so it is absolutely essential that the government comes forward not only with the registration scheme for short-term rentals, but give local authorities the real powers to regulate the number and the location of Airbnbs so that we can get that balance right between getting homes for young people and for people wanting to live in an area where they work, with having tourism on the other hand. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
I have to notify the House, in accordance with the Royal Assent Act 1967, that the King has signified his royal assent to the following acts: Universal Credit Act 2025, Armed Forces Commissioner Act 2025. And I call Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in this debate, and I wanted to take on the challenge that the Shadow Chancellor said about, let's talk about how we got to this point and the devastating consequences of that. Well, let's start first with, despite 27 tax rises under the last government, government debt rose from 60% of GDP under them to 100.5% of GDP. They were borrowing for day-to-day spending. And he talks about unfunded commitments. Well, we know about unfunded commitments because that was the £22 billion black hole that they left of unfunded commitments. And he says that property ownership is something he really cares about. But they were responsible for 6% fall in home ownership of people aged between 25 and 34 under his watch. This government is building 1.5 million new homes, including record numbers of council housing and social properties, as well as renter rights reform, as well as looking into mortgage reform. This is a fair and more affordable housing mix for all. And when we talk about what drove that fall in people owning homes, young people owning homes, we have to look at inflation. Inflation peaked at 11.1% under the last government, Conservative government, almost hitting Margaret Thatcher's record of 17%. High interest rates seem to be something the party opposite is very comfortable with. In 2022, food inflation hit a 45-year high. And in 2023, the UK recorded the highest inflation rate in Western Europe, the only country to have double-digit inflation. But under this government, in only a year, we have had 5 interest rate cuts. And the real cost of that can be found in the number of children living in poverty. There was a 20% increase in child poverty between 2014 and 2024. Food bank demand rose by 3,772% under the Conservative government. In 2010, approximately 2.3 children living in relative property. In 2024, that was 4.5%. That is shameful. It was the biggest fall in living standards on record, and it is now under this government that wages are finally rising faster than prices. And we have seen the results of those cuts in spending, particularly in areas like youth services, where they had a 73% real terms cut under the last government, and it's this government that's putting £88 million back into youth clubs. Is that what you want to cut? Finally, I want to talk about businesses. The Shadow Chancellor stood up there and said there was nobody on this side of the House that had experience in starting a business, running a business and growing a business. Well, I, for one, have done that. So have many people on this side of the chamber. He should get to know his colleagues before he makes those assertions. 300...
Peter Fortune.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. After a summer of rumoured tax rises, my constituents are deeply concerned. They're already paying more because Labour broke their promise to freeze council tax, because they broke their promise not to increase national insurance, because they broke their promises to first-time buyers, small businesses and farmers. Thanks to Rachel Reeves' anti-business policies, growth forecasts are collapsing, borrowing costs are sky high, and our national finances are shot. Instead of looking at their reckless decisions, Labour are now calculating the best way to raise taxes. And my constituents are now worried that the Chancellor is eyeing up their family home.
Absolutely.
On the edge of Greater London, homes in Bromley and Biggin Hill are expensive. Yes. The average house price is well over £500,000. And rumours that the government may scrap the private residence relief would be devastating. It would slap my constituents with an average £33,000 tax bill when they sell their family home. And if someone's scrimped, if they've saved, if they've been lucky enough to see the value of their home go up, they shouldn't be handed a punitive tax bill. It only serves to knock working people back down when they are trying to get ahead. Of course I'll give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Residents in Bromley, like in Bexley, would have also been hit by the Mayor of London's 77% increase in his share of council tax since he took office, alongside various other driving taxes. Does he agree with me that this increase in property taxes would be the final straw that broke the camel's back for many residents?
Thank you very much. And I do agree that the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is causing residents in Bromley and in Bexley real financial hardship. However, I in absolutely no way believe that this is the final straw that the Mayor of London can find to damage my constituents and yours. I'm sure he's got plenty more straws and a lot more camel that he'd like to lay them on. As I was saying, this irresponsible policy would be economically ruinous. Imagine if somebody bought a house in Bromley in 2010 for £3,500. Today it would cost somewhere in the region of £550,000. If they wanted to move to a new area for work or to be closer to family, without that relief, the tax bill would be somewhere in the region of £50,000. And that's an eye-watering bill which stops people moving and wrecks the housing market. And that's why I urge others here today to support the motion which rules out any further reckless tax rises.
Hear, hear.
Working people cannot afford to keep bailing out Labour. Thank you.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it's wonderful, really, to be back for another Opposition Day debate. I'm sure we can all agree. Another debate about thank you very much, everyone. A debate about imagined proposals. And it must be difficult for members' office because for so many years this would have been the time of the year that they would have been preparing for their conference, preparing for the budget. But of course, they're not writing the budget anymore, and there will be scant attention paid, I'm sure. As my honourable friend, thank God they are not writing the budget because, as I will come on to, we've seen what their budgets have led to. But I understand the frustration. But it's nice to see they've settled into the most comfortable aspect of being in opposition. And as I've said before in some of these debates, as a Labour Party member of many years standing, I have a huge amount of experience of the comfort of opposition, because you start to be able to create straw men of what the government might be doing. You talk about the fears that you have. You rile up a bit of concern amongst your supporters. But what they aren't doing, I'm afraid, what they aren't willing to do is set out their actual plans for the country.
They don't have any.
My right honourable friend makes a very good point. Because the parties opposite, and all parties opposite, I'm afraid, again, this is the nature of the easy early years of opposition. They want the benefits of our difficult choices, but they are unwilling to say how they would pay for them. And I'm afraid I'm sick and tired of listening to the never, never from the benches opposite about where they are very confident and comfortable with the imaginarium of the budget that they believe is going to happen, but they're unwilling or incapable to come up with real and meaningful proposals. But we know some of the proposals that have been floated by the party opposite, whether that's cutting maternity pay, whether that means testing the state pension, or whether that is attacking the minimum wage. We also know what the impact of a Conservative budget means. It means the grotesque chaos of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's budget. I would call it a bombshell, but bombshells only go off once. And that bombshell is going off in the homes and communities across this country every single day. There are families today on 5-year mortgages or longer who would have had low interest rates now. But despite the admirable and welcome 5 interest cuts under this government, will be paying hundreds or thousands of pounds more per year. And I would simply say, in closing, to members opposite, they express concern for those invaluable homes. Many of those invaluable homes will have, understandably, significant mortgages. Many of their constituents who they are concerned about today will have seen their mortgages go up by hundreds or thousands of pounds thanks to the actions of their government that we are all still living with and which I'm afraid the cheerlead at the time. That is not imaginary, that is the real consequences of their government, and it is what we are trying to put behind us.
Deputy Speaker, the Treasury has been flying more kites than the end of Mary Poppins in the papers over the last few weeks. But if they're true, the Chancellor is preparing the most destructive raid on homeowners in living memory. Families across my constituency of Farnham and Borden are bracing themselves for new taxes on homes over £50,000, capital gain tax on family houses, a revaluation of council tax, and even a land value tax. This is not reform, this is a sledgehammer aimed squarely at aspiration, mobility and stability. And once again, it is the South and the South East that will be punished the most. In Farnham, where the average house price now exceeds £600,000, with detached homes at nearly £900,000, families could face annual bills of nearly £5,000 on top of mortgages, council tax and energy costs. In Hazelmere, Liphook and Borden, households will not be spared. These levies will strip thousands from budgets already stretched to the limit. And what of pensioners and downsizers in Greyshot, Churt, Bramshot, Tilford or Frensham? They would face the grotesque prospect of capital gains tax on their primary residence.
Will the honourable member give way?
I will do.
Thank you. He talks of pensioners. Does he agree with me that this is an extra pressure for them, given all the concern that was put upon them because of the cut to winter fuel payments?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. And once again, this government showing that it doesn't understand and doesn't value pensioners in this country and the sacrifice that they have done. Everyone, pensioners, farmers, small business owners, are seen as a cash cow for this government. And as you rightly say, I will give way.
Giving way. The Conservative government raised taxes 25 times in the last Parliament. How many of those tax rises did he oppose?
I don't want to correct the honourable gentleman, but I wasn't here to oppose or support any of those. But what I would gently remind him of, and I use the word gently because I know the honourable member on the front bench loves the word gently, so I said it twice now. But the reality was that there was a pandemic that had to be funded and dealt with. There was a war in Ukraine that had to be funded. And as we've gone back in history a bit, we had to deal with the deficit that the last Labour government left us. And that is the reality of the situation. No, I won't. No, I'm afraid I've given away a couple of times. This is a tax on the family home, and it will hit hardest those who have worked hard, saved responsibly, and played by the rules. Let us be clear, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is not simply a question of numbers on a balance sheet. It is about whether families can stay in the communities where they raise their children. It's whether pensioners can pass on their homes, and whether young people will ever see the ladder of opportunity come down again. A capital gains tax on main homes will trap people in their properties, create a locked-in market and dry up the supply of homes. Transactions will slow, chains will break, and first-time buyers, the very people Labour claimed to champion, will be shut out even further. The government has tried to defend this agenda by talking about fairness, but there is nothing fair about a pensioner in Gretham being forced to sell their family home to pay the taxman. There is nothing fair about young families in Linford choosing between childcare and a new annual property levy. And there is nothing fair about placing the heaviest burden on one region of the country simply because its housing stock is higher in value. In truth, this is a South and South East tax dressed up as national fairness. And this is part of a pattern, Madam Deputy Speaker. From scrapping the pensioner fuel allowance that my honourable friend from Bromley and Biggin Hill mentioned, to threatening VAT on private schools, to punitive business tax rises, every single decision seems to be about sending a political signal rather than supporting families or growing the economy. And the consequences are plain to see. Falling business confidence, another year of negative hiring expectations and growing unemployment. Wasn't their white paper meant to be called Get Britain Working? All we're seeing is Britain grinding to a halt. The Chancellor may talk of fairness, but she's stripping away the last sanctuary for working people, the roofs over their heads. Overtaxation without clarity will paralyse the housing market, punish my constituents and undermine economic stability. Madam Deputy Speaker, if you tax homes, you tax hope, and that is the surest way to drain ambition from our country. We should be protecting families, not forcing them to sell up. We should be supporting aspiration, not taxing it into extinction.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think it bears repeating exactly the record that we, the Labour government, had to deal with when we took over last year. We've heard, theories propounded on the relationship between tax and growth and public spending, and how if we only lowered taxes, we would enter into a glorious period of growth and even better public services. But the facts of the matter are, it has been clear to see the impact of that theory and ideology over the last 14 years. Austerity cut the engines of this economy, leaving us with public services that were not delivering for British people. Investment in our services and our country was cut, and this left us at the mercy of global shocks, meaning that we were less well prepared and less well placed to withstand them. So the upshot of that in my constituency of North East Derbyshire has been seeing GP wait lists far too long, bus routes disappear from rural villages that really need them to give opportunities and connect families across my constituency. We've seen NHS waiting lists up, whether for serious surgeries, NHS dentistry or GP access. And what this has resulted in is serious ill health issues across my constituency, a restriction of opportunity for young people, and across the whole of North East Derbyshire, a restriction on opportunity and growth for the very people that will drive growth in this economy, those who will start and drive small businesses. We've heard again and again from the benches opposite about how they support the 1%, and they have come out fighting for that 1% very hard today indeed. Now, they are saying that they're very concerned about yearly charges on people who are just starting out in life and they've just bought their first homes. And yes, I'd love to talk about charges that bear no resemblance to service, and I'm particularly referring to fleasehold and charges by estate management companies that bear no relation to the services that they provide. This is a real problem in my constituency of North East Derbyshire, and I know many of my colleagues here on the benches have also raised it repeatedly. In my constituency in Wingworth, First Port, in particular company, have repeatedly raised service charges, so that service charges are providing services that the constituents have not received, and for very spurious reasons. I've also heard about how some residents have been forced to pay for a play park when there is no play park that First Port or any other company is providing in the area. What this means is that for those who are starting out, they've got their mortgages, they've got their homes, they just want to get on and live their life, they are being subject to often thousands of pounds each year, which is not delivering the services that they deserve. I know this is a problem elsewhere. We've heard horror stories of how charges or ground rents have risen exponentially. None of these problems, which I think we can all agree is a problem, were dealt with by the previous Conservative government. I didn't notice any particular concern raised about them at the time, and I know it's an issue that we will continue to fight hard for and against on this side of the House. To conclude then, I think a really important point when we look at what this Labour government has achieved since coming into office, actually we have seen real wages rising faster than prices, the first time in a very long time. I really cannot stress how important it is that we are seeing real wages rising. 3 million people across this country have seen the minimum wage rise. This is exactly the sort of thing that led me to join the Labour Party, and is one of the most proudest things that I've seen that we've achieved, is wages for the very poorest in society going up, including those starting out on their very first job, those who are under 21. I would also like to highlight another massive achievement that we have done. We in the Labour Party believe that taxes is what you take to make sure you can deliver public services. Lower taxes and lower public services are not going to result in a better rising living standards for those across our country. Yes, we have had to make some difficult decisions, but what we have seen is the NHS waiting list falling month after month, and I know that my constituents have already started to feel that. Why? Because they have told me so.
Madam Dirprwy Llefarydd, can I refer the House to my register of financial interests? As we look forward to a budget for Christmas, as a representative of a rural agricultural community, this Labour government's last autumn budget remains a significant concern. Indeed, the wide divide between rural Wales and Westminster was made clear as day last year, when the Chancellor set out plans to restrict full inheritance tax relief from April next year to the first £1 million of combined agricultural and business property. Combining the APR and the BPR means that the asset value of the tools and the machinery necessary to operate a farm business are affected, as well as the agricultural land and property. And while the government maintains that this policy will only affect around 500 estates a year, and that the small family farms will not be affected, the Farmers Union of Wales and NFU Cymru's calculations show otherwise. And when I told the Minister of Food Security and Rural Affairs that 92% of one local accountancy firm's clients would be hit, it was totally dismissed by him. But now, even though the producers of the research used by this government to justify its plans have conceded that working farmers are more likely to suffer under the policy than the wealthy. Sorry, did you want to come in?
I thank the honourable member for giving way. Over half of UK farms have a net value of over £1.5 million. Farmers are already worried about the family farm tax and now looking at the potential tax rises that the government is floating for the upcoming budget, seeing lower rates for increased rates for inheritance tax and other forms of property taxes. These are our food producers. They are writing to me concerned about why they should continue to sow the seeds. Does she agree farmers need a break?
Oh, absolutely, and I'll come on to that in a minute. In Wales, it's between 75 and 90% of farmers are going to be affected by this, according to NFU Cymru and FUW. What's clear that this government's APR changes will not hit tax-avoiding wealthy land hoarders. Instead, it will punish working farmers in Wales whose income dropped an average of 34% last year, forcing many to sell what their parents and their grandparents have spent lifetimes building. And it's not just farm business owners either. Family Business UK figures estimate that these changes will cause 15.5 million reduction in GVA in my constituency of Caerfyrddin alone,